Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is banished from Konoha, but gives them the slip and boards a ship. Soon after, he is shipwrecked on Ember Island and is saved by Azula. 3 years later, Naruto is Azula's bodyguard while she hunts for the Avatar, but did he see the last of Konoha? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 18, Gather and Fall. Location, Earth Kingdom. Appa flew towards Ba Sing Se. Aang and Sokka sat on his head while Akela and the Sand siblings sat on his back. Gaara had woken up a little earlier from a deep, peaceful sleep. So, what kind of trouble is Katara in? Sokka asked Aang. They had been pushing it ever since they had picked up the tribesmen, and they were probably going to reach Ba Sing Se with a new record. I don't know, the air nomad answered. In my vision, I just knew she needed help. It might have been sketchy, but it was all he needed to come back. It would be nice if your avatar powers could be a little more specific from time to time, the tribesman complained slightly. Vague answers will get you into trouble, Gaara agreed. Shinobi tried to avoid situations that came from vague answers. But Aang was barreling straight ahead. Sokka noticed a dust trail moving fast to the outer wall of Ba Sing Se. What is that? He asked, pointing at it. Getting closer, they saw that it was Toph earth surfing. Need a ride? He called out, making her lose concentration and fall off, making the others wince. That's going to hurt, Kankuro stated. Akela nodded in agreement. Location, Ba Sing Se. The Dai Li stood in front of Azula. They stood in a hall with statues looming over them. It would have been intimidating if the statue weren't covered in drapes. The Earth King and the Council of Five do not trust the Dai Li, she told them. They imprisoned your leader, Long Feng. Soon they will turn on you and eliminate you. Seizing power today is a matter of life and death. She walked down the stairs. This coup must be swift and decisive. The Earth King and each of the 5 generals must be taken out simultaneously. Long Feng has placed you in my command while we overthrow the government. Spotting a nervous agent, she walked up to him while still talking to them all. If I sense any disloyalty, any hesitation, any weakness at all, I will snuff it out. That is all. The Dai Li marched away at that silent order. Ty Lee poured a cup of tea. Both she and Mai were still posing as Kyoshi warriors. Nice speech, Azula, she said to the princess as she walked back up to them. It was pretty and poetic, but also scary in a good way. Yeah, Mai agreed. I thought you were going to make that one guy pee his pants. That would have been something to see. There are still a few loose ends. The Avatar, and my brother and uncle, Azula said, holding the cup of tea. But with any luck, those loose ends would be tied up quickly. Iroh and Zuko stepped out of a carriage and started to walk to the palace. There are many times that I imagine myself here, at the threshold of the palace, Iroh said. But I always thought I would be here as a conqueror. Instead, we are the Earth King's personal guests, here to serve him tea. Destiny is a funny thing. It sure is, Uncle, Zuko agreed. Location, Earth Kingdom. They came in view of the outer wall. So how did it go with the guru? Toph asked Aang as she held on to Sokka. Did you master the Avatar state? Aang could only remember Puthik's last warning. If you leave now, you won't be able to go into the Avatar state at all. Aang, are you okay? Sokka asked, getting his attention. I'm great. It went great with the guru. I completely mastered the Avatar state, he hurriedly assured them before chuckling nervously. That baka, Gaara muttered to himself, although his brother and sister had heard him. He's lying. Are you sure? Temari asked him quietly. Look at his body language. I've seen our academy students lie better to their teachers. He never mastered the Avatar state. That was the entire point of journeying to the Eastern Air Temple in the first place. Should we tell the others? Kankuro asked his brother. He shook his head. No, we don't need any more problems. We'll keep silent for now. Location, Ba Sing Se. Zuko and Iroh were led to a room. They poured the tea, sat down and waited. What's taking so long? Zuko wondered aloud after a minute of silence. Maybe the Earth King overslept? Iroh suggested. Somehow, I don't think so, he replied, half sarcastic. He then noticed that Dai Li agents were entering the room. Something's not right, he whispered as the agents encircled them. It's tea time. Azula announced as she walked into the room. Azula. Her brother said in surprise as he quickly stood up. Have you met the Dai Li? She asked the two of them. They're earthbenders, but they have a killer instinct that is so firebender. I just love it. She had them trapped with nowhere to go and they knew it. Iroh stood up from where he knelt, seemingly calm and relaxed. Did I ever tell you how I got the name the Dragon of the West? He asked his niece, a cup of tea in hand. I'm not interested in a lengthy anecdote, Uncle, she replied, sounding like she was bored with them already. It's more of a demonstration, really. He began to drink his tea. Zuko had a small smile on his face, realizing what was about to happen. Iroh pulled him behind himself and breathed fire at the Dai Li agents. While they were distracted, Zuko punched a hole in the wall that led into the hallway using fire bending. He ran through the hallway with Iroh behind him. Two agents went through the hole after them, firing off pieces of their rock gloves via earth bending. They smashed into the wall as Zuko and Iroh turned the corner. The wall leading to the outside burst open due to lightning generated by Iroh, who then proceeded to jump out of the hole on the second floor and landed on a bush statue. Come on. He called to Zuko. You'll be fine. Zuko was indeed about to jump when someone pulled him back in. Uncle, run. He shouted out before disappearing from Iroh's view. He tried to break free from his captor's grip. Would you stop moving around so much, please? His captor asked him. He stopped moving, he knew that voice. I guess I should have expected to see you around. Anywhere my sister is, you're there or nearby. Right, Naruto? He turned his head slightly to look at the blonde. I am her bodyguard, Naruto answered. That you are, Azula said as she joined, flanked by Dai Li agents. What's the matter, Zuzu? You're not going to challenge your sister to an Agni Kai? She asked her brother with a mocking tone of voice. Why should I even bother? You'll just refuse. Besides, you have the advantage in numbers. I guess you did learn something at Akawan. She walked away as the Dai Li agents took care of him. Aang had Appa land at the royal palace. They went straight to the Earth King to ask him about Katara. Katara's fine, he reassured them. You have nothing worry about. But, in my vision, I felt so sure she was in trouble, Aang told him. Well, she met with the Council of Generals with Team Asuma and Shuyi to plan the invasion, and since then, she and Shuyi have been off with your friends, the Kyoshi warriors, while Team Asuma went to go look for the Fire Nation Paragon again, the Earth King said in reply. That's a relief, Sokka said. See, Aang? There was nothing to worry about. Okay, maybe you're right, Aang conceded. Whatever the case might be, he couldn't go back to the Eastern Air Temple again, not with Puffik there. Believe me, if there was any danger at all, Bosco's animal instincts would sense it, the Earth King told them. Bosco just raised his sleepy head, making Akela actually snort in disbelief. The others briefly wondered how he could pull that off. Katara kept walking back and forth in the catacombs. You know, you're going to wear out feet like that, Princess, Shuyi told her from where she sat against a cluster of crystals. How can you be so calm? Katara demanded of her. They were imprisoned and she was acting like it was nothing. What? You think this is the first time I've been in a situation like this? she asked back. You just have to relax and be patient. I mean, it's not like it could get any worse. Just then, the entrance to the catacombs opened up. You've got company, a Dai Li agent announced as he threw a person down the ramp and closed the entrance. Zuko! Exclaimed Katara with a surprised look as she looked at the person who had joined them. Her surprise soon turned to anger. Shu Yi just groaned. I just had to say it. Appa landed in front of the house, allowing his passengers to get off. Toph walked up to the door and opened it. They walked through, only to find their movements frozen. What is the meaning of this, Shikamaru? Gaara called out to the house. They could suddenly move again. Sorry about that, Gaara, Shikamaru said as he and the rest of Team Asuma walked into the room. We had to be sure. Sure about what? Temari asked him. She could see that the Konoha shinobi were tense. Momo! Cried Aang as the lemur ran towards and up him. What happened? Gaara asked the other shinobi in the room. Katara and Shu Yi have been captured, Asuma stated. Everyone, except for his team, looked at him in surprise and shock. Katara is in trouble. I knew it. Aang declared. He had been right to leave the Eastern Air Temple. Oh no, groaned Sokka. Akela sniffed the air and began to growl at the door, his hackles rising. What's the matter? The tribesman asked the wolf. There's someone at the door, Toph announced. They heard knocking from the other side. Actually, I know who it is. It's an old friend of mine. She opened the door to reveal Iroh standing in their doorway. Glad to see you're okay. I need your help, Iroh replied. His presence surprised both Sokka and Aang. Both Team Asuma and the Sand siblings were on guard. Toph just raised a hand in greeting. You guys know each other? Aang demanded, pointing at them while Momo flew away. He couldn't believe that one of his own friends was on passable terms with Zuko's uncle. Put your finger down, Aang, Asuma told him with a pointed look. It's rude to point. The Avatar stared at him for a moment, but lowered his finger when he couldn't hold the gaze. I met him in the woods once and knocked him down, Toph told them as Iroh scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Then he gave me tea and some very good advice. May I come in? Iroh asked, taking his hand from his head. Toph nodded and he walked into the house. Princess Azula is here in Ba Sing Se, he said without preamble. She must have Katara. Aang said in realization. And Shu Yi as well, Gaara said. She has captured my nephew as well, Iroh told them. Then we'll work together to fight Azula and Naruto, as well as save Katara, Shu Yi, and Zuko, the air nomad declared. If he had to ally himself with Ko to save Katara, he would do it in a heartbeat. The Dragon of the West was surprised by what he heard. Naruto is here in the city? He shook his head. I should not be surprised. Wherever Azula was, Naruto was as well. Which begged the question, how long had his niece been in the city? Is this really a good idea? Shikamaru asked them all. It didn't seem like the best of plans to go on. Do you have any other ideas, little boy? Temari asked in return. I know how you must feel about my nephew, Iroh told them. But believe me when I tell you there is good inside him. Yeah well, let us know when the good is on the outside as well, Sokka said. Akela rolled his eyes at what the tribesman said. Katara and Shu Yi are in trouble, Aang told his friend. All of Ba Sing Se is in trouble. Working together is our best chance. Sokka stayed silent for a few seconds and then gave a nod of agreement. I brought someone along who might be able to help us, Iroh told them, walking back to the door. He opened the door and walked back onto the porch with the others behind him. On the porch was a gagged Dai Li agent, relieved of his rock gloves and shoes. His feet and hands were also tied. Toph quickly held him in place by earth-bending two columns to jut out of the ground and hold him. Iroh walked up to him and pulled the gag down, as the ungagged Dai Li agent gasped for his breath. Azula and Long Feng are plotting a coup, he told them in a hurried voice. They're going to overthrow the Earth King. Where are they keeping my sister and Shu Yi? Sokka demanded, pointing his machete at the agent. Akela simply bared his teeth. In the crystal catacombs of Old Ba Sing Se, deep beneath the palace. Everyone turned around and headed to Appa. Gaara stopped, turned back around and knocked the agent unconscious with his sand before catching up. The movements of all the generals and the Earth King have been plotted out step by step, a Dai Li agent told Long Feng as he stood outside the prison cell. Good, Long Feng replied as he mediated. And the Fire Nation princess is cooperating? Oh yes. More than cooperating, the agent answered. She's really taken charge. She's terrifying and inspirational at the same time. It's hard to explain. He walked off. Long Feng opened his eyes. This might turn out to be a problem, he thought. I'll have to make an example of the princess to reinforce the loyalty of the Dai Li. It would not do to have the loyalty of his men to be questioned by a foreigner. Why did they throw you in here? Katara demanded of Zuko as she paced back and forth. Zuko said nothing, he just kept his back to her. Oh wait, let me guess. It's a trap. So, when Aang shows up to help us, you can finally have him in your little Fire Nation clutches. Oh, for the sake of the spirit world, give it a rest, princess, Shu Yi told her. It was getting annoying, the way the waterbender was ranting on at the third prisoner. Zuko turned his head to look at her once, and then looked away. You're a terrible person. You know that? Katara asked him, still ranting. Always hunting us. Hunting the Avatar. Trying to capture this side of the world's last hope for peace. But what do you care? You're the Fire Lord's son. Spreading war and violence and hatred is in your blood. You don't know what you're about. Zuko finally replied. I don't. How dare you? You have no idea what this war has put me through, me personally. She turned away and sat down, her hand touching the necklace at her neck. The Fire Nation took my mother away from me. Tears flowed down her face. Yes, everything is all just about you, isn't it, princess? Shu Yi asked with sarcasm in her voice. And here I thought it was all about the arrowhead. You know, one of these days that mouth of yours will get you into a lot of trouble. Shut up, Shu Yi. Just shut up, the waterbender ordered the girl. I'm sorry, Zuko apologized to Katara, turning to face her. That's something we have in common. She looked at him with surprise, wiping the tears away. Well, what do you know? Toph said as she knelt and placed a hand on the earth. There is an ancient city down there. But it's deep. She bent the earth to open up, creating a tunnel. We should split up, Sokka said. Aang, you go with Iroh and look for Katara, Shu Yi, and the angry jerk, no offense, he told Iroh. None taken, he replied. And I'll go with Toph to warn the Earth King of Azula's coup. Momo landed on his shoulder, showing who he wanted to go with. We'll go with Aang and Iroh, Asuma said, gesturing to his team. Then we will go with Sokka and Toph, Gaara replied. They went their separate ways. Aang, Iroh, and Team Asuma went into the tunnel. While Aang extended the tunnel, Iroh used his fire bending to light the way. So, Toph thinks you give pretty good advice and great tea. Aang said to Iroh as they walked down the tunnel. The key to both is proper aging, he replied. What's on your mind? Aang extended the tunnel again. Well, I met with this guru who was supposed to help me master the Avatar state and control this great power. But to do it, I had to let go of someone I love. And I just couldn't. When he didn't hear anything from Team Asuma, he stopped and looked at them. You guys aren't surprised? Gaara already told us, Shikamaru told him. Apparently, you're a bad liar. Perfection and power are overrated, Iroh told them. He knew that all too well from his experience. I think you were very wise to choose happiness and love. Aang extended the tunnel for a third time. What happens if we can't save everyone and beat Azula and Naruto? He asked. Without the Avatar state, what if I'm not powerful enough? He hadn't really thought about it until now. And now, it was all he could think of. I don't know the answer. Sometimes, life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you just keep moving. Aang extended the tunnel again, making the end break away and extinguishing Iroha's fire. You will come to a better place. They found themselves looking at old Ba Sing Se, the cavern illuminated by glowing crystals. They climbed the staircase up to the royal palace. There's General Hao, Sokka announced as they reached the top of the staircase. Realizing that something was wrong, he grabbed Toph and hid behind a nearby column. Momo, Akela, and the Sand siblings followed them. General Hao was indeed walking towards them, but what he didn't realize was that Dai Li agents were on the columns. Two of them sprang into action by throwing metal cuffs at his hands and forcing him to his knees. What's going on here? Demanded the general. You're under house arrest, a third agent told him. The coup is happening right now. Sokka whispered to the others. We've got to warn the Earth King. He grabbed Toph by the arm and ran off, the others right behind him. As they made their way to the Earth King, the other generals on the Council of Five were being captured by the Dai Li. But they were unaware of this as they entered the throne room. Thank goodness we're in time, Sokka said as he ran up to the throne, seeing that the ruler of Ba Sing Se was still sitting on it. Sitting next to him was Bosco, and standing below the dais were Ty Lee and Mai, still dressed as Kyoshi warriors. In time for what? Asked the Earth King. Yeah, what are you in time for, cutie? Ty Lee asked as she cartwheeled towards Sokka. He kept a blank face. The next time you kidnap someone, try to remember who's at the door, he told her. Ha! Just drop the act already. We know who you are. They told us. He swung a punch at her, making her backflip onto the top of the Badgermole statue. What is going on? The Earth King demanded, looking at everyone in confusion. They're not the real Kyoshi warriors. Toph told him, making him gasp in surprise. Sorry to disappoint you, Mai said before throwing a couple of knives at her. She blocked them by bending a rock barrier out of the floor. She then bent it at Mai, who jumped over it, but got caught by a stone column that Toph bent out of the floor as well. Ty Lee appeared in front of Sokka with a laugh, making him move away. He didn't try to fight her because he knew that if he made one mistake, she would take it. Every time she tried to jab him, he would dodge it. Oh, it's like we're dancing together. Ty Lee told him. Well, this is the only dance you're getting out of me, he told her. He had been hit by her once. He didn't want it to happen again. This fight is over, Azula declared. She stood behind the Earth King, and was literally holding him at flame point. Sokka looked back at the Sand siblings, only to see that they were being held by Dai Li agents. Knowing that there was nothing they could do, both he and Toph held their hands up in surrender. Ty Lee took advantage of that by leaping in between them and knocking them out via chi blocking. Momo tried to fly away, but a Dai Li agent sent him crashing to the ground by encasing him in one of his rock gloves. Kami, take it. We should have helped them. Kankuro swore as he tried to struggle against the cuffs holding him. They restrained us the moment the fight started, Temari reminded him. They didn't even have a chance to open their weapons, much less fight. Get them all out of my sight, Azula ordered, extinguishing the flame on her 2 fingers and shoving the Earth King down the steps. Ty Lee and Mai dragged Toph's unconscious body, while a Dai Li agent dragged Sokka away. The agents also escorted the Earth King and the Sand siblings away as well. Akela and Bosco had no choice but to follow them, Bosco grunting with worry and Akela with a furious look in his eyes. Azula watched them go with a satisfied look, sitting on the Earth King's throne. The look turned into a scowl when she saw Long Feng approaching the throne with several Dai Li agents behind him. "Now comes the part where I double-cross you," he announced. "Dai Li, arrest the Fire Nation princess." The Dai Li did not move an inch, making Long Feng turn around to face them. "I said arrest her." They still did not move. "What is wrong with you?" Azula just sat there, her skull turning into a smug grin. "Dai Li, restrain Long Feng." Naruto's voice rang out in the room. Two of the agents immediately cuffed Long Feng with metal restraints. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "You will release me. I am your leader." "No, you're not. You're just a temp," Naruto said, walking out behind a column. "I lead the Dai Li now, as is my right." "What are you talking about?" He smirked before turning around and walking towards the throne. "Tell me, Long Feng, do you know how the Dai Li were created?" Long Feng managed to regain his composure. "Of course I do. During the reign of the 46th Earth King, there was a peasant uprising. The Earth King summoned Avatar Kyoshi to quell the uprising. She refused and proposed a compromise instead. The Earth King would listen to the peasants' grievances, and in return, she would protect the king's interest and the cultural heritage. She created an elite group of earthbenders that now known as the Dai Li. And now, he led the Dai Li." The blonde listened as he spoke, before finally shaking his head. "Points for trying, but you forgot the other half of the story." "What do you mean?" He had read the history books. He knew what had happened. Naruto's smirk grew wider. "See? If you were the actual leader of the Dai Li, you would know the rest of the story," he told the former advisor of the Earth King. "I am the leader of the Dai Li." Long Feng almost shouted at him. "These men have proven themselves to be traitors to the state. The rest of the Dai Li will free me soon enough. They are loyal to me. Once that happened, it would be time to go through the Dai Li ranks and see who was loyal to him." "Wrong. The truth is that any Dai Li agent who was loyal to you is now dead. I had them killed." The blonde said to Hai. "What?" Long Feng's composure slipped as he had a look of shock on his face. "That couldn't be true, could it? It is true that Kyoshi created the Dai Li, but she never told the Paragons at that time what had happened with the Earth King," Naruto began. "When they had found out, they were furious. All four of the Paragons went to Ba Sing Se and straight to Kyoshi. They told her that she had no right to create a group that had the potential to wield power over the city and the Earth King. She told them that it was none of their business, and that the Avatar answers to no one. They responded by telling her that the Avatar did answer to someone, she answered to them. As punishment, they stripped her of command over the Dai Li, and sent her back to her home island in exile. She had stayed there, in exile, for 40 years. The Paragons took control of the Dai Li after that." "What is your point?" He wasn't seeing one himself. That little story the blonde had just spun still didn't explain why the Dai Li refused to listen to his words. The smirk on the blonde's face had become fox-like. "A Dai Li agent's loyalty to the Paragons first, and to the Earth Kingdom second," he explained to the former advisor. "I believe you saw a demonstration of that when Sokka showed them his Paragon medallion, correct? How do you know of that?" Very few people knew of that incident, and he had tried to keep it that way. "I gave him the book that held the laws concerning the Dai Li. He has as much right to command the Dai Li as I do, but we do not hold full command. I take it that you've taken the time to read the reports about the war? If so, you'll probably realize who I am." The smirk disappeared from his face, leaving him with a serious expression on his face. Long Feng's eyes went wide as he finally realized who it was standing before him. "You're the Paragon of the Fire Nation." "Correct, and now I have to take out the trash." "Dai Li," he barked. The agents turned their attention to him. "This man is guilty of crimes against Ba Sing Se. His punishment is execution." The former advisor chuckled. You can't just kill me. I run this city, it's under my control. You kill me and everything will collapse. He turned to look at Azula. I will make you another deal. Keep me alive and I will run this city for the Fire Nation in the place of the Earth King. It would keep him in power and the city would still be his. Azula said nothing in reply. And wrong again, Naruto told him. How am I wrong? He asked, confident and patronizing. He knew that she would take the offer, she would have to. I'll let you in on a little secret. The blonde looked around, like he was making sure they were alone, which they weren't. You haven't been in control of Ba Sing Se since about, last autumn. His face lost the slightly comical expression he had as he spoke, and became serious again. The method of execution is stoning. Dai Li, you will carry out the execution immediately. He Dai Li took Long Feng away. Long Feng didn't resist, he was just escorted away with a look on his face that he had lost in the very game he thought he was the master of. Both Azula and Naruto watched as he left. And that takes care of it, Naruto said. Indeed, Azula agreed. She looked at her bodyguard. You know, I was quite capable of taking care of him, she told him, slightly annoyed at what had happened. You were going to give him the divine right to rule speech, weren't you? He asked her, giving her a pointed look. Yes, she admitted. She had given that speech to Naruto a year ago. His response was to take her to rural villages in the Fire Nation, and had her meet with the village leaders. After having many talks with many different leaders, she realized the right to rule wasn't divine but choice. I just wanted to throw him off, that's all. That's what I'm for, he told her. He then noticed that a Dai Li agent had returned. I take it that my orders were followed? Yes, sir, the agent answered him. We have taken them to a room in the palace. Good, keep a close eye on them. I don't want them to get into trouble. The agent bowed and left. He turned to Azula. And now, I have to go. With that, he disappeared with a poof. I'm sorry I yelled at you before, Katara apologized to Zuko. The two of them were now standing while Shuyi was still sitting down. It doesn't matter, he told her. It's just that for so long now, whenever I would imagine the face of the enemy, it was your face. To her, his face was the face of all the Fire Nation. My face? Repeated Zuko as he touched his scar. I see. People always saw the scar first and him second. No, that's not what I meant, she tried to assure him. It's okay. I used to think this scar marked me, he told her. The mark of the banished prince, cursed to chase the Avatar forever. But lately, I've realized I'm free to determine my own destiny, even if I'll never be free of my mark. Maybe you could be free of it, she offered him. What? He turned to look at her. I have healing abilities. It's a scar. It can't be healed. Everyone knew that. She walked forward, taking out the vial that Pakko had given her. This is water from the Spirit Oasis at the North Pole. It has special properties, so I've been saving it for something important. I don't know if it would work, but... She touched Zuko's scar. However, they were interrupted when a side of the catacombs burst open to reveal Aang, Iroh and Team Asuma. Aang! Cried Katara in joy. She ran towards him and gave him a big hug. He hugged back and glared at Zuko. Zuko got a hug from Iroh and glared back. Oh, thank the spirits you guys got here, Shuyi told Team Asuma as she stood up from where she sat. It was getting too melodramatic in here. It was 5 minutes away from being a bad romance story. Well, you're certainly taking this in stride, Asuma noted. As I told Katara, this is not the first time I've been in this kind of situation. I knew you would come, Katara told Aang as she gave him another hug. Uncle, I don't understand, Zuko told Iroh, who broke in the hug. What are you doing with the Avatar? Saving you, that's what, Aang retorted. Zuko took a step in his direction but was stopped by Iroh. "Zuko, it's time we talked," he stated. He looked over at the others. "Go help your other friends. We'll catch up with you." Aang raced back into the tunnel with Team Asuma and Shuyi behind him. Katara followed, but not before giving Zuko one last look. Why, uncle?" Zuko asked. He had tried to capture the Avatar since he had been scarred. And he had been right there, but his uncle let him go. "You're not the man you used to be, Zuko," Iroh told him. "You are stronger, wiser and freer than you have ever been. And now you have come to the crossroads of your destiny. It's time for you to choose. It's time for you to choose good." Out of nowhere, crystals sprang out of the ground and encased Iroh. "I expected this kind of treachery from Uncle," Azula said as she and two Dai Li agents appeared. "But Zuko, Prince Zuko, you're a lot of things, but you're not a traitor, are you?" she asked her brother. "Release him immediately," Zuko demanded. "It's not too late for you, Zuko," she told him, ignoring his order. "You can still redeem yourself." "The kind of redemption she offers is not for you," Iroh warned him. "Why don't you let him decide, Uncle?" Azula asked before turning her attention. "I need you, Zuko. I've plotted every move of this day, this glorious day in Fire Nation history, and the only way we win is together. At the end of this day, you will have your honor back. You will have Father's love. You will have everything you want. Zuko, I'm begging you," Iroh said to his nephew. "Look into your heart and see what it is that you truly want." "You are free to choose," Azula told her brother. She signaled the Dai Li to leave. They left via the way they came in while she went into the tunnel that Aang created. Zuko stared at the tunnel in silence, thinking about what she had just said. And she was right, he was free to choose. Aang and his group ran back into the area of Old Ba Sing Se. "We've got to find Sokka, Toph, and the others," Katara told them. "Talk about stating the obvious," Shuyi replied with a roll of her eyes. It was at that point a bolt of lightning landed in the middle of the group. It sent Team Asuma flying into one of the buildings carved into the rock. Another bolt of lightning hit the building, causing it to collapse, and was blocked off by rubble. A third bolt of lightning flew at them, but this time, Aang was ready. He bent up a wall of rock with earth bending to block it. It did block the bolt but was destroyed in the process. However, it did show them who threw the lightning bolt. It was Azula. Katara ran up to the water and bent a large portion of it out of the river to block another lightning bolt. She then tried to effectively drown Azula by turning the water into a tidal wave. In response, Azula bent a huge flame shield to block the water, causing it to turn into mist. "I got her," Shuyi said, charging into the mist. Both Katara and Aang heard flesh hitting flesh, grunting, and finally, someone hitting something hard. "Shuyi?" Aang called out. "Are you okay?" They got their answer when Azula appeared out of the mist, jumping off a crystal. While in midair, she shot two bursts of blue fire at Aang and Katara. They worked together to bend a water current out of the river to act as a shield. The mist cleared, showing Shuyi sitting against a crystal, unconscious. Azula landed on a rock pillar, which Aang took advantage of. He dropped the water and bent the pillar to break apart. Azula realized this and jumped off, landing between Aang and Katara. It was a standoff with nobody willing to make a move. Azula knew that if she made a move on one, the other would attack her. And Aang and Katara knew that if one attacked her, she would attack the other. The standoff was interrupted when a fireball struck the ground in between them. They turned to see Zuko at the tunnel entrance. He had taken the more restrictive parts of his clothing off, allowing greater mobility. He held a fire-bending stance and walked towards the standoff. He eyed his sister and then turned his gaze to Aang, who then realized what that meant. Zuko shot a fireball at Aang, who bent the air around into a shield and jumped away. Azula just smirked and turned her attention back to Katara. In the midst of all this, Shuyi was still unconscious. Sokka looked out the cell's barred window. See any Dai Li agents nearby? Toph asked him. Nope, all clear, he told her. He backed away from the door so that Toph could stand in front of it. Using her new-founded gift of metal bending, she crumpled the door and punched it clear off its hinges. Let's go, Sokka declared. I'm not leaving without Bosco. The Earth King told them as he was yanked out of the cell by Sokka. What about Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari? Toph asked as they ran. The Suna shinobi had been put somewhere else, and they didn't know where. We'll have to come back for them later, the tribesman told her. Zuko fired off multiple fireballs at Aang. The air nomad bent the air to form a shield, blocking the fireballs, and bent a human-shaped gust of air at Zuko, sending him crashing to the ground. Aang leapt at him with another gust of air ready. He rolled out of the way and bent another fireball at his feet, making jump high onto a rock pillar. He hopped back onto his feet and shot off multiple fireballs at Aang again, making him leap from pillar to pillar. When he finally stopped on a cluster of crystals, Zuko bent a bigger fireball at him. He tried to earthbend the crystals beneath him to rise into a shield, but the fireball smashed through. Zuko then bent the fire in his hands into whips and swung them at Aang. The Avatar leapt out of the cluster of crystals and hopped around the upper levels, avoiding the fire whips. Meanwhile, Azula charged at Katara. She retaliated by sending a wave of water at her. She dodged, but it was close enough that she could see her face in the water's reflection, and the water cut off some of her hair. Zuko was still trying to hit Aang with his fire whips. Aang kept jumping along the ceiling until he landed on a stalactite. Using earthbending, he broke off the tip and sent it slamming into the ground with him along with it. The impact caused a crater and sent Zuko crashing into a large cluster of crystal. After knocking Azula off her feet, Katara bent the water beneath to form water whips around her hands and arms. Azula sent a burst of blue fire at her, but she swung one of the whips at Azula, blocking the fire and trapping her arm in water. She tried to do the same thing again with her foot, but Katara trapped that in water too. Seeing that his sister was in trouble, Zuko got up, charged at the two girls, and used his foot to bend a thin wave of fire at the water whips, cutting them in half and freeing his sister. Azula looked at her brother, and gave a small nod of appreciation before turning to look at the crater that Aang made and of which he just crawled out of. She went at him while Zuko and Katara dueled with their respective whips. I thought you had changed. The waterbender yelled at him. Did the conversation they had mean nothing at all? Was it all a lie? I have changed, he replied calmly. While they dueled, Azula and Aang were staring down the other. Azula bent fire backwards to propel herself at him. His response was to bend nearby crystal to shatter and to reform as armor on him. He then used earthbending to slide forward at Azula. They charged at each other, until Azula stopped and bent the fire she used as propulsion at Aang in full force. He tried to go through it, but it caused the crystal armor to shatter, and sent him flying into another of the buildings carved into the rock. Come on, it's easy, Ty Lee told Bosco, who sat nearby. You just walk on your front paws instead your rear ones, like this. She did a handstand and started to walk forward. She was caught off guard when the earth rose and trapped her hands. Surprised, she lost her balance and placed her feet in front of her. The floor also encased them, making her completely stuck. Bosco clapped when he saw this, and Akela just got up from where he sat. That is a nice trick, Toph said. She and Sokka readied themselves for a fight. Just take the animals, Mai said, raising a hand in surrender. She was in no mood for a fight. Bosco! Cried the Earth King, hugging the bear, who grunted in happiness. Akela walked over to Sokka and sat down on his haunches. Where are Gaara and his siblings? Sokka demanded of the last fake Kyoshi warrior. Mai shrugged. Don't know. You could go look for them, but I think you should be more concerned about your friends and old Ba Sing Se. He looked at her in surprise when he heard those words. We have to go, he finally said. We have to go help Aang and the others. What about Gaara? Toph asked. Once everyone else is safe, we'll come and find them. Let's move. They ran out of the throne room to look for Appa. Both Zuko and Azula worked in tandem to fight against Katara, who was not faring well. After Zuko's fireball knocked away most of her water, Azula's fireball sent her flying into a cluster of crystal. It knocked her out and shaken her braid loose. The cave began to rumble, and Aang leapt out of the building he crashed into, slammed into the ground, and began to earth surf towards them. He reached the river when a Dai Li agent appeared out of nowhere and broke Aang's earth surf, sending him flying. He tried to get up but stopped when he looked up and saw Dai Li agents were both backing up Zuko and Azula and surrounding Katara. Katara herself regained consciousness and saw that she was surrounded. She bent water from the river to surround her and used the octopus form, using the 8 tentacles to ward off the agents. Aang stood up to fight but saw that both he and Katara were outnumbered. There's too many, he muttered to himself. That was when everyone heard a muffled shout of Tsuga, passing Fong. And the collapsed building that Team Asuma was trapped in burst open, sending dust everywhere and obscuring everyone's vision. I hope we aren't late to the party. A familiar voice to Katara and Aang asked. The dust cleared to reveal Kiba sitting on Akamaru. Behind him were Team Kurenai, Team Guy, and Team Asuma, all were ready to fight. Sorry for taking so long, Choji apologized to Aang and Katara. It was kinda hard to track down 8 different chakra signatures over an entire continent while trapped underground. Also add in the fact that Shikamaru wasn't really helping, Ino added, throwing a glare at her teammate. It was a drag, he replied. Focus, people. Barked out Asuma, who held his chakra blades ready. We've got a big fight on our hands. Indeed. Guy shouted as he got into his fighting pose. Let us show them the power of our youth. Not exactly how I would say it, but Guy's right, Kurenai said. Attack the Dai Li. The teams of Konoha shinobi charged directly into the fray. Guy and Lee used the Goken on the Dai Li while Niji and Hinata used their Byakugan and the Juken. Kiba and Akamaru tore through the agents using the Getsugo, while Shino helped by using his Kikaichu to distract them. Ino and Kurenai held back, Ino to provide medical support and Kurenai to cast Genjutsu. Tenten protected them from harm by fighting off Dai Li agents. Shikamaru used his Cage Mane to hold agents still while Asuma used his chakra blades to take them. Occasionally, one of them would get close to Zuko or Azula, but would always get stopped by an agent. Katara defended herself by using the octopus form to swat away Dai Li agents. The Dai Li were handling themselves well enough against the shinobi, attacking in coordination with other agents and always making sure that Azula and Zuko were not attacked. Aang just watched as the fight went on. I have to help somehow, he thought. He just couldn't stand there. Looking at Katara, Puffy's words came back to him. The only way is to let her go. Guys, Katara, I'm sorry, he whispered. He turned his back and made a crystal tent with earth bending to protect himself. He sat down and began to meditate again. Once again, he saw himself on a bridge of light over the world, the image of the Avatar state hovering above him. It descended and again, he was encased in the orb. His tattoos glowed and in the real world, they began to glow as well, causing the crystal tent to light up, getting everyone's attention. His eyes opened and they glowed as well. The crystal shattered and, in a beam of light, he rose up into the air. Katara looked at him with hope in her eyes as she watched him gain control of the Avatar state. The shinobi watched on with varying degrees of awe or surprise. Shikamaru then noticed that Azula was missing. Looking around quickly and calmly, he found her standing behind Aang, moving her hands around, trying to generate lightning. Reacting quickly, he extended his shadow towards her and caught her just as the lightning was ready. Raising his hand, she was forced to mimic it, sending the lightning up towards the ceiling. It's too troublesome for you to do that, he said. Nice going, Shikamaru. Kiba cheered as the others realized what he had done. Aang had almost complete control of the avatar state when he felt something like a cold hand grabbing hold of him, yanking him out of the orb and away from the avatar state. In the real world, the glow from his tattoos and his eyes disappeared as well as the beam of light. He bent a cushion of air to soften his landing. What happened? He asked, surprised. What's going on? Katara asked aloud. How could he be cut off from the avatar state? Sokka or Naruto weren't there to do such a thing to him. How could that have happened? You know, you should really pay more attention to Sokka's paranoia, Shu Yi's voice rang out. Everyone looked over at her as she stood up. It'd probably save you a lot of trouble. What did you do, Shu Yi? Ino asked, stunned to see her moving. Isn't obvious? She asked back. I cut Aang off from the avatar state. I do have that ability. But you're not a paragon. Katara protested. Not unless. She trailed as she realized what that meant. Not unless you're the paragon of the air nomads. Aang finished. How could you betray your own kin? Did the Fire Nation pay you that much money to betray us? How much did they pay you to betray me? How much? He yelled at Shu Yi, fury lacing his voice. She stopped walking and looked at him, standing by the river. She began to laugh. Wow, you really are an idiot, she said, still laughing. Just who are you? She looked down at the water. The laughter was gone, but she was confident. I thought it was so obvious, she said. My name should have at least alerted you, but you even failed to recognize that. What do you mean, your name? Asuma asked. She looked up from the water and over to the resident waterbender. Katara, would you please tell the shinobi what my name means? It means tree leaves. Katara answered, confused at where this was going. What did a name have to do with anything? Correct. Now the shinobi wear a leaf as their insignia. They serve a greater purpose than themselves, like leaves to a tree. To them, that tree would probably be called. She trailed off, letting them try to figure it out. Konoha, Shikamaru answered, his eyes widening in both shock and realization. Shu Yi does not exist. She's not real. She never was real. How could he be so stupid? It was there, right in front of his face, and he didn't figure it out. Shu Yi walked across the water, her hands forming a hand seal. Kai, release. A huge cloud of smoke appeared, along with the sound of poof. The person who walked out of the smoke and onto the other side of the river was not Shu Yi. It was Naruto. To say Katara and Aang were shocked would have been an understatement. You mean? Katara asked the blonde, speechless. That I was with you the entire time you've been in Ba Sing Se? He finished as he stood next to Zuko. Yes, I was. And now, you've lost. The city of Ba Sing Se is now officially under the control of the Fire Nation. It won't be successful if we stop you here. Aang stated, anger flashing in his eyes. He would not let that happen. And how exactly do you plan to do that? The blonde asked him, still confident. You can't go into the Avatar state, remember? He still has us. Lee shouted, looking he was a step away from attacking his former teammate. Your unyouthful actions will end today, Naruto. Really, are you sure? There's no way you can take us all, Naruto. Kiba pitched in. Not even with your clones and all these guys to help you. Actually, yes there is. He clapped his hands into a different hand seal and activated his chakra. All the shinobi fell to the ground, screaming in pain as their bodies stopped obeying their commands. Shikamaru's shadow detached itself from Azula, allowing her to move again. What did you do? Asuma demanded, struggling to say something through the pain. But it was all he could do. The pain kept him immobilized. You all have a paralyzing seal on your bodies. I placed them there when I touched you. Team Asuma realized that, as Shuyi, he touched them many times. Team Kurenai and Team Guy realized that when they fought him, he must have placed the seal on them when he made contact with their skin. They tried to stand up, but their bodies wouldn't listen to them. Eventually, they passed out from the pain. Naruto looked at his former teammates and friends with no emotion on his face. Take them away, he ordered a group of Dai Li agents. They quickly took hold of the shinobi and dragged them away. A burst of light appeared from behind him. Turning around quickly, he saw that Aang was trying to take control of the Avatar state again, this time with anger. He floated in the air, his eyes and tattoos glowing once more. But before Naruto could cut him off, a bolt of lightning flew out of nowhere and struck him in the back. In Aang's vision, the orb disappeared, the Avatar state fell, and the bridge disappeared, sending falling down to the planet, while also falling down to the ground in real life. Katara watched in shock, tears falling down her face. Reacting quickly, she bent the water around her into a wave and rode it over to where Aang was falling. It caught the Dai Li agents, Zuko, and Azula off guard as they got swept away. Naruto jumped up onto the ceiling and stayed there. She caught Aang and let the wave crash onto the ground. The water flowed away as she held his body. Looking up, she saw that both Zuko and Azula coming towards her, only to be stopped by a blast of fire. Iroh leapt down from the wall of the cave and landed in front of Katara. You've got to get out of here, he told Katara. I'll hold them off as long as I can. He began to fight against the Dai Li. He used fire and they used earth. Katara carried Aang's unconscious body over to the waterfall. Bending water from said waterfall, she bent it to send both her and Aang up the waterfall and out of old Ba Sing Se, fleeing from the battle. Iroh took a quick look back to see that they had gotten away. That was all Naruto needed to drop down from the ceiling and land behind the Dragon of the West. He drew his Jian and placed it against Iroh's neck. Don't make me do this, Iroh. Just stand down, he ordered. Iroh complied, allowing two Dai Li agents to encase him in crystal. Naruto removed his Jian from Iroh's throat and sheathed it. Iroh looked over at his nephew, who returned the look. He turned away and closed his eyes. As Sokka, Toph, the Earth King, Momo, Akela and Bosco watched, Katara placed Aang on Appa's head and took out the vial holding the water from the spirit oasis. Bending the water out of the vial, she lifted Aang up so that she could get to his back, which now held an ugly red scar. She bent the water into the scar, which glowed brilliantly for a second and then disappeared. Thinking that she had failed, Katara gave a small cry of grief and hugged Aang's body. However, his tattoo glowed briefly, and he gasped lightly. Katara heard the gasp and looked at his face. His eyes were open. He saw Katara and gave a tired smile. Katara gave him a hug, happy she hadn't lost him. We've done it, Zuko, Naruto, Azula said as she sat on the throne of the Earth King. Naruto and Zuko stood on opposite sides of her. It's taken 100 years, but the Fire Nation has conquered Ba Sing Se. I betrayed Uncle, Zuko confessed sadly. The look that Iroh had given him had said it all. He had made his choice, and this was the consequence of his choice. He knew that, but it still hurt. No, he betrayed you, she replied before standing up from the throne. Zuko, when you return home, Father will welcome you as a war hero. She was sure that was what the Fire Lord would do. But I don't have the Avatar, he protested. What if Father doesn't restore my honor? She placed a hand on his shoulder. He doesn't need to, Zuko. Today, you restored your own honor. I'd say he restored his honor at Akawan, Naruto said, scowling. It was obvious that he was annoyed about something. What's the matter, Naruto? Azula asked, turning to face him. Who in the name of Kami fired that bolt of lightning? He demanded. Both of you were standing in front of the Avatar, and the lightning struck him in the back. So, who threw it? I did, a voice came from the doorway, making them all look that way. A woman about 18 years old walked up to the throne with a sway in her hips. She had high cheekbones and long, dark, wavy hair. Her eyes were the kind of gray one would see in a storm. But while she was beautiful, the three people still on the dais knew that she was anything but. "What are you doing here?" Azula asked the woman, her tone both guarded and yet filled with venom. She smirked as she stopped in front of the dais. "Now, is that any way to greet your older sister, little Azula?" she asked back. "You mean half-sister," she snarled. Already, the memories of her childhood were coming back to haunt her. "But I am your sister nonetheless." Azula was about to retort when Zuko spoke. "You never answered her question, Yao Jing. What are you doing here?" he asked his half-sibling. He may have been Ursa's firstborn, but he was not Ozai's. That honor belonged to her, his bastard sister. Yao Jing looked at her half-siblings. "Father sent me to go looking for Azula. He was wondering what was taking her so long," she told them. "You were there for the entire fight, weren't you?" Naruto asked her with a cold tone. "I saw a chance and I took it," she replied with a casual shrug. She turned her gaze back to her half-siblings. "I'll stay here until you leave for the Fire Nation. It's been a while since I spent time with my little brother and sister anyway." She walked out of the throne rooms. With good reason, Azula growled. Neither she nor Zuko have wanted to be near her again, not after what she tormented them with when they were children. Naruto watched as the eldest and illegitimate child of Ozai walked away. This does not bode well, he thought. Though she has never admitted it, Yao Jing was never fond of Zuko and Azula. We're going to have to be careful. One wrong move, and they would be dead. Chapter 19, To Converse and to Rescue. Location, Ba Sing Se. Iroh sat quietly in his cell, his back to the door. When the door opened, he didn't react. The silence stretched out for a couple of minutes. "You're just going to ignore me, aren't you?" Naruto finally asked him, standing at the door. "What do you want, Naruto?" Iroh asked in return. He kept his focus on the cell. It was comfortable enough, he supposed. "You don't seem to be the type of person to visit someone whom the Fire Nation declared a traitor. Where did Lu Ten die?" It was a simple question, but when the blonde asked it, the Dragon of the West felt his heart clench. "Why do you want to know that?" he asked, quiet anger filling his voice. "Do you wish to place a statue on his grave that shows the world how the Fire Nation conquered Ba Sing Se? If that was the case, they would never know where he had buried his son." Naruto shook his head at those words. "No, Azula did have a statue made. But it's not to show the defeat of Ba Sing Se, it honors the soldiers that we lost," he explained. "She wants to honor her cousin and the people who served the Fire Nation." Iroh was silent as those words went through his mind. "Very well," he finally said before telling Naruto where Lu Ten was killed. "Thank you, Iroh." He turned around and started to walk out of the cell. "Naruto," Iroh called out before he closed the door. "If my niece chooses to betray her country and earn her father's wrath, would you still protect her?" He had seen the silent questions beginning to show on his niece in the few seconds he had seen her in Ba Sing Se. He wanted to know what her bodyguard would do. He stood at the door, his back to Iroh. "I swore to protect her. No matter what it cost me," he answered, walking out of the cell and closing the door behind him. He walked to another door, his feet echoing amongst the rocks. He opened it and walked into a large room where prison bars blocked off half of it. Dai Li agents stood against the wall, ready to move at his command. In front of the bars was a chair, which he sat in. "So, how's it going, everyone? The effects wear off already?" he asked the Konoha shinobi behind the bars. "How could you be this unyouthful, Naruto?" demanded Lee, gripping the bars of the cell tightly in his hands. "How can you imprison your own friends?" That's funny." Zuko, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee aren't in that cell. Yao Jing on the other hand. He muttered to himself. What was that? Shikamaru asked. He was trying to get every piece of information he could. They were in a situation that demanded such a course of action. It's none of your business, the blonde told the lazy shinobi curtly. Yao Jing was none of their business, and he was keen to keep it like that. Where is the Kazekage, Naruto? Asuma asked him. Ever since they woke up in the cell, they didn't know what had happened to the Suna shinobi. What does it matter to you? He asked back. Are you thinking about leaving Konoha and joining Suna? He sounded like he didn't care. Naruto, if you hurt Temari, I will tear your head off. Shikamaru threatened him, uncharacteristic anger appearing on his face. He looked like he was about to pry the bars apart. Naruto looked at him for a minute, quiet surprise on his face. He had obviously not been expecting that reaction. Well, what do you know? You do care. How were you able to take control of Ba Sing Se so easily? Kurenai asked him. That was the question on their minds. It seemed like he had just walked in and took control of everything. What? Are you asking me if I took control in a day? He laughed like what she said was a joke. I took control from Long Foam last autumn. It was quite easy, all things considering. If you had the city, why didn't you arrest us the moment we came through the inner wall? Choji asked him. He would have had them at that exact moment, and they wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. In case you forgot, I was with you at the time, fat-ass, the blonde replied, setting the Akimichi off. Besides, I didn't go through all the trouble of those plans to beat the Arrowhead for no reason. Plans? Repeated Shikamaru as his other two teammates calmed down Choji. What plans? Naruto smirked. Didn't you realize it, Shikamaru? You guys have been dancing to my tune ever since Full Moon Bay. If I wanted to, I could have made it so that Aang would have never found Appa. What are you talking about? Hinata asked. Aang had missing posters of Appa sent around the city. Team Asuma had informed the other teams on what had happened in the city when they first woke up. And the person who had information was someone he knew, aka Jet, he finished for her. And you guys already know that he was captured and brainwashed by the Dai Li. What you don't know is that I was the reason he got caught in the first place. I sent the Dai Li into the scene Jet was causing with Zuko and Iroh. And afterwards, once they had him, I ordered that he be brainwashed. But Jet was brainwashed so he could mislead us, Ino protested. If Naruto had him brainwashed, he could have been ordered to kill them. Instead, he tried to lead them down a false trail. And how did you find out about the brainwashing? Naruto asked her. Do you think it was a coincidence that his two friends came out of that side street just as soon as you passed? All it really took was a crashed cart here, a sell on meat and vegetables there, and before you know it, they saw their old friend and telling you all about what happened. Arranging all of that was easy. So was getting Katara to run back to tattle to the Earth King, and getting caught by Azula. He saw the looks on their faces. Do you think that it was a coincidence that Iroha's tea shop was in the perfect spot between the Council of Five and the Royal Palace? The guy who made the offer works for me. Works for you? Hinata repeated, like she couldn't believe what she had heard. Yes. Quite a few businesses in the city work for me. It had been something he had done when he first entered Ba Sing Se. He only had a few, but they were in the right places. That was all he needed. Why did Long Feng never realize that he was no longer in control? Shino asked. He got overconfident and careless. Once he began to treat the city as his own toy, his control of the Dai Li began to slip. When I snuck into the city and met them, it was the state I found them in. Contrary to what you may think of the Dai Li, most of them did felt that it was their duty to protect the city. Not like Long Feng was doing, but protecting it for real. So, when I presented myself to the head Dai Li agent, he agreed with what I wanted to do and so did the others. It did not go that easily. You must have had difficulties, Niji protested. There were always difficulties when people did things like that. True, the blonde admitted. There were Dai Li agents who were actually loyal to Long Feng. We had to be careful. If we killed too many at one time, he would have noticed. You would not believe how much time it takes to make a Dai Li agent's death look accidental, and I had to plan several of them at the same time. And so, you stayed in Ba Sing Se, Kurenai finished for him. I only stayed until the start of winter. After that, I kept a clone in Ba Sing Se. Every 2 weeks, new information would be given to the clone. He would make another clone and then dispel himself, allowing me to get the new information. So, when you walked back in with us, you knew everything that had happened in your absence, Asuma said. It was the perfect way to manipulate them into falling for his traps. How did you get past us? Choji asked the blonde. There shouldn't have been a way for him to get past them so easily. His control over his chakra grew, remember? Shikamaru told him. But Sokka had a Kella, who's met him before, Kiba pointed out. Even if he used a henge, his scent would still have been the same. That was a lesson every Inuzuka clan member knew by heart. As they spoke, Ino remembered the time they had spent on the Serpent's Pass. Specifically, she remembered that one little talk Katara and Shuyi had. Katara walked alongside Shuyi. Hey, about last night, she began before smelling something in the air. What is that? Herb ointment, Shuyi answered curtly. Helps relieve some of the back pain I get in the morning. The rest disappears after I walk a bit. I see Ino figured it out, Naruto announced for all to hear. Shall I tell them, or will you? What's he talking about, Ino? Tenten asked her, curious to know. Shuyi always smelled like herb ointment, she told them. It wasn't strong, but it stopped Akela from recognizing him. It was a simple and effective method. It wasn't strong to humans. But to any animal that got close, it was the only thing they could smell, Naruto informed them. And so, you walked in right with us, Asuma said. I'll admit that there had been a few times where the clone and I switched places. For example, when I destroyed the drill or when Sokka attempted to interrogate people for information about Appa. But just to make sure you didn't suspect me, I planted evidence that ensured you thought I was trustworthy. And that came in the form of the Earth King's pet bear. Bosco? Asked Choji, confused by what he said. Shikamaru realized where this was going. Those memories he has of you are false, aren't they? Kurenai figured out what Naruto did just as quickly as Shikamaru did. You used a memory Ishiko memory implantation? She asked the blonde. Sure did, he answered easily enough. That's an A-ranked genjutsu. It was a surprise that he could do a high-ranking jutsu like that, even more so when it was a genjutsu. Kurenai-sensei, didn't you say the memory Ishiko has a big weakness? Hinata asked. She remembered her sensei having that conversation with them after they had been promoted to Chunin. Kurenai nodded in acknowledgement. After a lengthy period, the false memories start to deteriorate. If you try to reinforce the memories, the person will start to lose their sanity. On people, yes, Naruto said, joining the conversation again. But you've never tried it on animals, have you? Besides, you're assuming that I planted the memories back in the autumn. When else could you have done it? Shikamaru asked. How about at a party for said bear, does that work? Flashback. Excuse me, sirs, Naruto told the two men in his disguise as a waiter. But the Earth King wanted the bear near the best food. If you'll excuse me. He held the food under the bear's nose, getting his attention. Slowly, he forced the bear back to the end of the table where his seat was by using the food's delicious smell. Once the bear was seated, the food was placed in front of him. Here you are, sir, he told the bear. The Earth King wants the catering staff to tell you to mind your manners. So please be careful about how you eat. You wouldn't want the Earth King to be mad at you, would you? His hands, obscured from everyone's view, quickly went through the necessary hand seals. Genjutsu, Memory Ishiko, he muttered before touching the bear's fur. The bear's eyes widened slightly as the jutsu took hold. Seeing that his mission was done, Naruto walked away. End flashback. So, you gave the bear false memories to ensure your place with the group, Shino said. And you told them that story so that when you actually met the bear, his reactions would be genuine. It was quite a brilliant move. He was willing to admit that. The story was real as well, in case you're wondering, Naruto told them. I did actually spend the winter when I was 5 with a mother bear and her cub. The only difference is that when spring came, a villager killed the mother bear and the cub. When he found me, he decided that it would be a great opportunity to kill the Kyuubi brat. He said those last words with a self-mocking tone. Of course, that's when the ANBU arrived. Always showing up when it looked like they were going to fail their job and lose their lives. Don't mock those people, Naruto, Kurenai said to him sternly. They tried to protect you. And what a great job the ANBU did protecting me. Yet they turned a blind eye when those villagers who were calling for my head tried to kill me. How could I appreciate what they have done? He asked, completely sarcastic. There were probably a few who cared, but many of them agreed with what the villagers view me. Nothing but a filthy, subhuman who is unworthy of life. Naruto, you're as human as the rest of us, Neji said. It doesn't matter what they thought of. You don't know what it's like to be branded with a mark that sets you apart. A mark that can never be wiped away, Naruto said, cutting him off. Your words, Neji, not mine. The Hyuga branch member remembered those words. He also remembered when and where he had said them. I will admit I said those words, but I've changed. I don't believe those words anymore. And I'm guessing that after years teasing me, calling me names, and making fun of what I could do as a shinobi, you've all come to care for me. The blonde asked the rest of the Konoha 11. Of course, we have, Naruto, Hinata told him. They all cared for him and wanted him to come home. He gave a snort of derision at her words. If that was true, then I wouldn't have left, and the village wouldn't have betrayed me. The village would have never betrayed you, Naruto. Lee shouted at him. They would never do something so unyouthful. Then why did the Hokage plan to have me exiled? He asked back. Can you tell me why? Lady Tsunade wasn't going to actually banish you, Naruto, Ino tried to tell him. She was going to have you smuggled out to Lord Jiraiya before the fire daimyo came. I know. That single sentence stopped the Konoha shinobi cold. You knew? Kurenai repeated, stunned to hear such a thing. But how could you even? She trailed off, unsure if she should finish it. Hanjin knowledge of the ventilation system in the Hokage building, he answered. I was there, listening when they decided to banish me, and I was there when that plan was suggested. But then you knew that she was trying to protect you, Asuma told him. If she wanted to protect me, she should have refused to banish me. He shouted, anger filling his voice and catching them by surprise. She should have told the councils that I was going to stay in the village and nothing they could do would change that. But instead, she decides to go along with this idea to have me smuggled out of the village and only let me back when the village needed me, like I was some kind of weapon. Oh wait, I was. Big deal. Kiba roared, glaring back at Naruto. So, what if your childhood was messed up? We also suffered as well, you know. We wanted to be friends with you when we were younger, but our parents simply told us to stay away from you and never gave a reason. Neji nodded but with a frown. Have you become the very person that we once were before you changed our viewpoint for the better? From what I heard, when Konohamaru told us after you were banished, you had the uncanny ability to inspire people to change for the better. What happened to that old Naruto that we knew? He died. Stabbed in the back, by the village that did not want him. Now I'm here, in another continent, fighting a war. Naruto turned to the Jonin. Did you really think that I would be the same ninja that you all knew if I came back? That life is gone, and it's never coming back. Kiba snorted. We can still try. The room was silent for a couple of minutes. He was angry, they could tell that much just by that little outburst. What are you going to do us? Shikamaru finally asked him once he was sure the blonde had calmed down. Are you going to leave us to rot in this prison? We'll escape eventually. I know you would, which is why I'm going to give you a choice. Do you see the Dai Li agents against the wall behind me? He gestured to the agents. Of course, we can see them, Tenten answered. They were right there for everyone to see. They had just been standing there, like statues. It was a little creepy, if she had to be honest. Good to know, because this is what is going to happen. I'm going to leave, but the Dai Li will stay. If you are still here after half an hour, they will leave and collapse the room, effectively burying you alive. That's no choice at all. Choji shouted, bringing his hands to the bars. You're going to kill us. There is a choice, Akimichi, he told him. Shut up and listen. I know that most of you came here via a seal, and I know that you can leave the same way. How do you know that? Niji asked. He smirked and pointed at Team Asuma. They told me. Everyone looked at them. The members of Team Asuma were cursing themselves. During the month they had spent in Ba Sing Se, Shui had asked them about where they came. They told a few things but nothing about Konoha. She then asked them how they got here. Ino showed her one of the seals and Shikamaru told her how it worked. So, here's your choice. You can leave here and return to Konoha, which would mean failing the mission and abandoning Sokka and the others, the blonde told them. Or you can try to break out of here and escape. But we all know it will take you more than half an hour to come up with a successful plan to get out of the city. You also have to consider the fact that if you do actually get out of the prison, every Dai Li agent will be on the lookout for you, and has orders to kill you if sighted. He looked at all of them. So, what will it be, the mission, or your friends? That's an impossible choice, Naruto, and you know it. Shino said. There was quiet anger evident in his voice. And yet, a Konoha shinobi had this problem before. Which is why I'm calling it the Tsukumo Hatake dilemma, he told them before getting up from the chair. Enjoy yourselves. He walked away. Is that all you're going to do, Naruto? Niji asked him. Are you just going to keep running away from us? He stopped at the door, his hand reaching for the handle. The words of the man in the swamp came back to him. No matter how hard you run or fight against it, your past will come back to you. The question is, what you will do when it catches up. The past is exactly that, the past. He thought to himself. I left the village and you all behind, he said aloud. If I want to keep running, I will. In case you decide to leave, I'll give you all this last warning. You ever come back here, I will kill you and send your head back to the village. Make no mistake. He opened the door and walked out. He left the door opened as he walked through the corridor. Go ahead, Naruto. You just keep on running. But when you finally stop, we'll be there. We'll always be there to bring you back. Kiba's voice rang out through the open door. He stopped at the staircase. No, you won't, he said to himself, before walking up the stairs. Zuko walked down the street. It was a little subtle, but he could tell the difference in the people. Before, they went along with their lives, like nothing was wrong. But they were all afraid of the Dai Li and the mere mention of the war, afraid that if they spoke out, they would be taken away. Now, the threat of the Dai Li coming into their lives was gone, but they were still afraid. They were afraid of the Fire Nation and its soldiers. The difference was that where they had hidden their fear of the Dai Li, their fear of the Fire Nation was out in the open. They looked at the soldiers, the tundra tanks, the Komodo rhinos with different levels of fear, sadness, anger, and hostility. He couldn't blame them. At least under the reign of Long Feng and the Dai Li, everything was normal, and everyone knew what was supposed to happen. But now, they didn't know what would happen, and that terrified them. As he walked, he saw a familiar sight, Pao's tea shop, the tea shop where he and Iroh first worked at when they came into the city. It was there he met Jean, who asked him out on a date and had gotten a job there, last he heard. Deciding not to push his luck, he kept on walking. When he reached the end of the street, he heard a woman scream and the sounds of a fight starting. Turning back around, he saw a nearby group of Fire Nation soldiers run into the building. He rushed to the tea shop's door and opened it. What he saw was the tea shop in ruins, a group of city guards standing in front of a group of Earth Kingdom citizens, two of which he recognized as Jean and Pao, and the same group of Fire Nation soldiers trying to restrain one of their own. All heads turned to look at him as he stood in the doorway. "What is going on here?" he asked as he walked in. "Move along, pretty boy," the restrained Fire Nation soldier said, his voice slurring, telling Zuko that he was drunk. "This doesn't concern you." "It does concern me when Fire Nation soldiers are causing a fight," he replied before turning to one of the city guards. "What happened? Why should we tell you?" "We all know that you're going to let him free," one of the citizens snarled at him, full hatred in his voice. "I'm trying to help." He turned his gaze to Pao. "Pao, do you recognize me?" "Lee, is that you?" the tea shop owner asked, his eyes widening in recognition. When Zuko nodded, he looked at the guards. "Tell him what happened, he can help us." One of the guards looked at Zuko. "The restrained soldier came in here, demanding food and drink," he began. "He was drunk, so a waitress asked him to leave. He slapped her and knocked her to the floor. He then thought it would be okay to force himself on the waitress. I and the other guards got him off the waitress. Enraged, he tried to fight us. It was then the other Fire Nation soldiers came in and restrained the drunken soldier." Zuko nodded his thanks to the guard. He turned around and looked at the restrained soldier. He walked over to the side of the shop where the Fire Nation soldiers had restrained the drunken soldier. "Is what he said true?" he asked. His voice was even and calm, making the other soldiers nervous. "So, what if it is?" the soldier demanded, trying to break free of the grip of the other soldiers. "She's nothing but a filthy Earth Kingdom whore. She should have been honored that I wanted to impregnate her. We are the greatest of the 4 nations." Zuko just looked at him, and then turned his attention to other soldiers. "Release him," he ordered, placing his hand on his Dao swords. They were hesitant, but they obeyed. The second the drunken soldier was released, his hands blurred. The Dao swords whipped out of their sheath, and made a bloody slash on the soldier's cheeks. The soldier stumbled back, allowing Zuko to take the advantage. He held one Dao sword at the soldier's throat and the other at his crotch. "I want you to listen and listen well," he told the drunken soldier. "The Fire Nation may have conquered Ba Sing Se, but that does not mean we will treat the people of this city like trash. They are under our protection now. Anyone who harms them will answer to the law, same as those who would harm a citizen of the Fire Nation." "How dare you?" the soldier bellowed, moving to punch Zuko, only to stop when he felt the Dao swords press down. "If you want to lose both your life and what makes you a man, keep talking." He turned his attention to the other soldiers. "Take this man and place him in jail. I want him to be court-martialed within the week." The other soldiers looked unsure. Who are you, sir?" one of them finally dared to ask. "Did you ever hear about the siege of Akawan?" he asked in return. If they knew, they would know who he was. And they did. The soldiers' eyes, even the drunken one, widened in realization once they had figured it out. "Oh, of course, my lord," the soldier said, bowing his head. "My apologies, we did not know who you were." "It does not matter," he replied, taking his Dao swords away from the drunken soldier and sheathing them. "Just make sure this sorry excuse for a soldier is behind bars." "Yes, Prince Zuko." The soldiers chained the drunk and led him out of the shop. In the silence that followed, Zuko turned to look at the rest of the people there. The silence stretched out for several minutes before he reached for his belt, took off a bag of money and tossed it at Pao. For the damages, he said quietly, before walking out the door. As he walked back onto the street, he spotted a familiar blonde nearby. Naruto. Nice job in there, Naruto told him, leaning against the tea shop wall. How long were you listening? He asked. He never did like it when people were listening on him. It made him feel uneasy. Since the guard told you what happened. He glanced up at the afternoon sun. Are you going somewhere, or you just wandering around? I just felt like taking a walk. It was the only way he felt like he could think about things. Ironically, he couldn't think at all. The blonde walked up alongside him. Come on, we should head back to the palace. The two of them started to walk away in the direction of the royal palace. It was a long walk, so they filled the air between them with conversation. Do you feel any different? Zuko gave him a look. What kind of question is that? It was certainly a weird one. There was no doubt about that. Humor me. You're not in exile anymore. Do you feel any different? I don't know, he answered with a shrug. It still feels like I'm exiled. Feels like I still don't have my honor back. The blonde snorted in derision at those words. I told you before. You've restored your honor back at Akawan. What makes you say that? You and Iroh walked straight into the colony, knowing that if you were caught, you would be executed. When the attack came, you didn't take the chance to run. You went straight into the fight and fought alongside the soldiers. You took command of the city and held out for 6 days, which is impressive for someone who had never been in command before. You then decided to take the offensive to the enemy and successfully defeated him, ending the threat to the colony. He listed off the reasons with his fingers. I can almost guarantee that once you get back to the Fire Nation, people will ask you why you did all that. It was the right thing to do. I may have been a prince in exile, but I was still a prince. They were my people, it was my duty to protect them. It might not have been his choice in the first place, but he was a prince of the Fire Nation. He did his duty, and his duty then was to the colony of Akawan. They walked on in silence for what felt like the longest time, the buildings around them gradually becoming better maintained. Hey, Naruto, I've got a question for you, he said as they walked through the upper ring. What? How did you deal with Azula? His eyes went flat at those words. You might want to consider rephrasing that question, he told Zuko. The threat that came with those words was silent, but it was clear. What I mean is, how did you change her? The scarred dragon clarified, having heard the threat. She's different from 3 years ago. The silent threat disappeared when Naruto heard those words and was satisfied by them. What makes you say that? The blonde asked him, curious to see what he would say. It's the small things. The way she says certain words, how she acts, her decisions. That stuff. There's a reason for that, he began. Azula has been having the same problems as you, she is conflicted. The only difference is that you had Iroh to help you. She had no one she could trust until I became her bodyguard. It wasn't easy, I'll admit that. It had been a challenge. She is different, but I don't know if it will stay like that. He paused for a second as they stopped to watch a carriage go by. You know, before we left, she would sometimes spend hours looking at the portrait of your family that hung in her room. Zuko was surprised by that little piece of information. Why? He asked as they started walking again. I asked her once. She told me that when she looked at the painting, she wanted to know if her mother hated her. Why would she care? Azula never cared about our mother. She always more interested in trying to be more like their father. Zuko, all children want to know that their parents love them, the blonde told him. You want your father's love. Azula just wants to know if her mother loved her. He stopped walking and watched as a family walked by. You guys are lucky. Zuko looked at the same family and then looked at Naruto. What makes you say that? He gave a sad smile as the family passed them. You know your parents. The scarred dragon winced when he heard those words. He had forgotten that Naruto was an orphan from birth. Sorry. Don't apologize. It's not your fault. He watched the family disappear around a street corner. Let's just go. They walked on in silence until they reached the royal palace. They stood at the base of the steps, so they could look up at the palace in all of its imposing glory. Finally, they climbed up the steps and saw that a Daily agent was waiting for them. Sir, the agent greeted Naruto. They disappeared 10 minutes after you left. Did they escape? The blonde asked. No, sir. Good. What about the others? We have kept them in the room and maintain a watch on them. About 2 hours ago, we heard someone inside say finally. Loudly, the agent reported. We are unsure of who said it and what they meant. He smiled briefly when he heard those words. That's okay, I have a feeling I know who was talking. Dismissed, he told the agent, who bowed and walked away. What was that about? Zuko asked as they walked through the large doors. It was a cryptic conversation, one he had no clue what they were talking about. The first part doesn't concern you, not anymore, the blonde replied as they walked through the hallways. The second part was about some people I once knew. He stopped walking when they came into a junction. Yao Jing was waiting for them. Hello, little brother, Naruto, she greeted them with fake politeness. She had a smile on her face that they all knew was faked. Were you talking about something? Yes, we were talking about the number of men you've been screwing since you were 10, Naruto replied with a straight face. Zuko held his tongue, but he could not keep the brief look of shock and surprise off his face when he heard those words. Yao Jing's eyes went flat and her face hard at those words. You think you're so funny, don't you? She made it sound like she wanted to hit him right then and there. Naruto smirked. Oh, I don't think. I know I'm funny. Do you actually need something, or are you just off to your next conquest? There will come a day, Naruto, when you aren't protected by your duty to Azula. On that day, I will make you suffer. She snarled. At the very least, try to make an effort, he replied, the smile still on his face. She clenched and unclenched her hands, like she wanted to desperately to bend a fireball at him. But instead, she stalked off. What were you thinking? Zuko asked him in a strangled whisper. I don't trust that woman. And neither should you, he replied, the smile disappearing. I know that already. He knew it all too well. If there was one thing that he and Azula shared, it was their hatred and fear of their bastard sister. Zuko, I mean it. Watch your back around her. He looked at Naruto. He'd only heard the tone in his voice once before, when he and Azula were going to be assassinated, and he had saved them. That voice meant he was deadly serious. All right, Naruto, I'll be careful. Thank you, Zuko. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go talk to some people. Do me a favor and get Azula. All right, I'll go find her. He went off in one corridor while the blonde went off in another. The walk felt long, mostly because the hallways were almost maze-like in their structure. But he wasn't troubled by it. He walked on until he found the door to the room he was looking for. He turned his attention back to the seemingly empty corridor. Stand down, he said aloud. A watch is no longer necessary. He didn't see any movement, but he knew that the Daily agents who were standing watch had left. Turning back to face the door, he took a deep breath and opened the door. Kankuro was at a table, adjusting what looked like a puppet. Tamari was polishing her fan nearby and Gaara was sitting against his gourd, meditating. But they stopped what they were doing and turned to their attention to Naruto as he walked into the room. So, you finally decided to reveal yourself, Naruto, Gaara said as he stood up. The blonde chuckled. I should have figured I wouldn't get past you, Gaara. When did you figure it out? he asked the Kazekage. When you showed yourself to the Earth King on the outer wall. It had been simple enough to put the pieces together. He just wondered if the others had done so before it was too late, but he had guessed they hadn't. Where are the others, Naruto? Kankuro asked. Where is Team Asuma? Why do you care? He asked back, only to have a kunai at his throat, courtesy of Temari. If you've done anything to them, to Shikamaru, I will tear your head off. She growled at him. He didn't move, but his eyes showed surprise. I'll be damned. You're both in love with each other, he said, wonder in his voice. What did you do? She demanded, ready to press the blade down harder on him. I made them leave and go back to the elemental countries. Shikamaru is safe, Temari, he assured her. He's back at the village. She felt a hand on her shoulder. That's enough, Temari, Kankuro told her, his voice calm and controlled. Lower the kunai. She did as she was told and stepped away from Naruto. Thanks, Kankuro. How's that doll coming? He asked with a smirk on his face. It's a puppet. He half shouted at the blonde, the calm and control in his voice disappearing in a blink of an eye. Kankuro, Gaara said with a warning in his voice. The puppeteer stopped, knowing what kind of warning it was. Sorry, Gaara, he apologized. He turned his attention back to Naruto. I managed to finish it. There are just a few adjustments that need to be done. Well, when you're done, how about you and I spar so you can test it in the field? He grinned. Sounds like a plan. Naruto, Gaara spoke again, getting the blonde's attention. On the outer wall, you hit it well, but you were surprised when you saw me. Why? He was instantly silent, not wanting to answer the question. But the unflinching stare the redhead was giving made him eventually answer. I saw you die, Gaara. What? Both Kankuro and Temari exclaimed, clearly surprised. How? Asked Gaara. We haven't seen each other for 3 years. It was a dream. I watched as the Akatsuki extracted Shikako from you. I saw them leave your dead body on the ground, like it was nothing but garbage. He was quiet for a few seconds. That was the only time I wanted to go back to the elemental countries. He desperately wanted to go, but the fox reminded him that it would have been too late and pointless. But why would you want to do that if you've stayed here all this time? Temari asked him. Because he is my friend, he answered firmly. If anything, he's my brother too. The Sand siblings were caught off guard by that. Naruto, if you saw what had happened, you know I'm not a Jinchuriki anymore, Gaara told him quietly. Doesn't matter, you were the same as me, he replied. That's what makes us brothers. Gaara remembered what Puthik had said during his time at the Eastern Ear Temple. The greatest illusion of this world is the illusion of separation. Things you think are separate and different are actually one and the same. Not just the elemental countries, the redhead thought to himself. But being a Jinchuriki doesn't mean being alone. Naruto is right. We are like brothers. For some reason, he was glad to think such a thing. Thank you, he told the blonde. Not a problem, buddy, he replied before giving the redhead a bear hug, who, after a moment's hesitation, returned it just as fiercely. I hope we're not interrupting anything? Azula asked from the doorway with a small smirk. Zuko, Mai, and Ty Lee stood behind her. What? Guys can't hug each other? Naruto asked back, breaking the hug and looked at the princess. You don't see it every day, Mai said in a bored tone. Deciding to be funny, he turned to look at Kankuro. Kankuro. Hug me, you beautiful bastard. He cried, throwing his arms wide. The puppeteer saw where he was going with this, and decided to play along. Come here, you amazing asshole. They pulled each other into a hug and tried to break the other's back. Okay, we get the point already. Temari told the two. Knock it off. No fun, Temari, no fun, Naruto told her as he and Kankuro broke the hug, big grins on their faces. So, what can you do, good looking? Ty Lee asked Gaara as she leapt in front of him with a cheerful smile on her face. Excuse me? He asked in return with a slightly confused look on his face. Sorry, Gaara, Naruto apologized. Ty Lee will flirt with anything that walks on two legs and has a penis. That's not funny, Naruto. She huffed at him as she pouted. I'm not that bad. She did have some standards and he knew that. Of which every male in the Fire Nation who has a girlfriend is thankful for, he replied with a straight face. Gaara has a girlfriend. Kankuro and Temari quickly chimed in. Oh, sorry then, the acrobat apologized to the Kazekage. She made it a rule to never flirt with someone who was with someone. It's no problem, he assured her. Ty Lee, how about you get out of our guest's face? Azula suggested with a small smirk on her face. Ty Lee flipped away and landed next to Azula, still a little embarrassed. Naruto looked at Gaara. You have a girlfriend? Of sorts, he replied, his cheeks lightly blushing. It was something he didn't really talk about and quite frankly, he was still unsure about it all. But the blonde just smiled at his friend. Way to go, Gaara. Naruto, could we get an introduction? Azula asked him pointedly. She didn't know his friends' names and she knew that was incredibly rude. Of course, Princess, he replied, his tone becoming formal. May I introduce Gaara no Sabaku, Godame Kazekage of Tsunagakure, his brother, Kankuro, and his sister, Temari. He turned to the Sand siblings. Gaara, this is the Princess Azula of the Fire Nation, her friends, Mai and Ty Lee, and her brother, Prince Zuko, known to the soldiers as the Scarred Dragon. They exchanged pleasantries. So, what can you guys do? Azula asked the Sand siblings. If they were like her guard, they must be able to do some amazing things. Gaara can manipulate sand, Temari can use the wind via her fan, and Kankuro is a puppeteer, Naruto told her, speaking for the shinobi. Ty Lee tried to stifle a giggle but failed when she heard what Kankuro could do. You play with dolls, she said, tears of laughter falling from her eyes. It was just too funny. Kankuro said nothing in return. He just shifted his eyes over to his work table, and then to Gaara and Naruto, his eyebrows raised in a question. Gaara nodded once. By all means, Naruto told him. He raised his left hand and flexed his fingers. Ty Lee's mouth clamped shut, not of her own violations, due to the muted sounds coming from her mouth, and her arms snapped to her side. When he moved his right hand, the puppet on the work table flew over and landed in front of her. A knife popped out of the right wrist and was pointed at her throat. Had you met any other members of the Puppeteer Corps, you would be dead for making fun of us, he told her with a smile that screamed danger to her. Would you like to continue laughing now? And no. She squeaked, the chakra string holding her mouth closed disappearing. Good to know. He placed the puppet back on the work table and let Ty Lee be able to move her arms again. That had been fun. You can use the wind? Zuko asked Temari. You're an airbender? No, Zuko, Naruto told him. She uses the wind, not the air. What's the difference? They were one and the same to him. With air, you push your opponent away, Temari explained. Wind, you slice them into pieces. When he heard the way she said it, he was a little unsettled by it. That's a graphic way of saying it. I'm sure the Avatar would have nightmares with what you just said about the differences between using the wind and using the air, he finally said. She shrugged. Tell it like it is. Hey, if he can use sand, doesn't that make him a sandbender? Mai asked, looking at Gaara. I thought benders only existed on this side of the planet. He's not a bender, doom and gloom, Naruto told her. But if we were to use that context, calling him a bender would be a bit insulting. He would not be a sandbender. He would be the sandbender. That doesn't make any sense, Ty Lee finally said. Azula, Mai, and Zuko nodded in agreement. He rolled his eyes and turned to the Kazekage. Gaara, can I borrow a kunai? Gaara handed him one. He took it and, before anyone could stop him, plunged it into Gaara's eye. But the attempt was stopped when sand from Gaara's gourd blocked the kunai. See? The sand protects him if someone tries to harm him, the blonde explained as he pulled the kunai out of the sand. No sandbender I know of can do that. He handed the kunai back to Gaara. Very impressive, Azula commented. Ty Lee tried to chi-block the Kazekage, who made no attempt to stop her. His sand, however, blocked her every strike. That's cool, she exclaimed as she looked at him. Huh, that's weird. She frowned as she stared at him. What is weird? He asked, confused by what she was doing. You've got two auras, but one of them is like a shadow of an aura, the acrobat told him. It's like it was there once, but now it's gone and left an imprint. He was about to say something when Naruto spoke up. Ty Lee, how can someone have a shadow of an aura? The blonde asked her, making it sound like what she had said was ridiculous. I don't know, she replied, looking at him with a frown. This is the first time I ever seen something like this, okay? You're probably imaging things. Her eyes narrowed. That's funny. You said something similar when we first met you. Anyway, Zuko said, raising his voice to get their attention, what are we going to do with them? They were helping the Avatar and his friends. Father would probably want to see them in chains. Naruto snorted in derision when he heard that. Not even the royal flaming asshole is stupid enough to place a foreign head of state in jail, he said. Besides, he's on vacation. Oh really? Asked Azula, an idea running through her head. She turned to Gaara. Lord Kazekage, how would you like to be able to visit the Fire Nation as a part of your vacation? It would be a privilege to have you and your family as our guests. Gaara realized what she was offering. If they went to the Fire Nation as guests, it would protect them even more from being thrown in jail. It would be our pleasure, Princess Azula, he answered, bowing his head a little. That was very smooth, Azula, Naruto complimented her, wearing a proud smile. Thank you, Naruto, she replied, a small blush on her cheeks. She didn't get compliments like that from him every day. Okay, let's get out of here. It's getting crowded, he said, ushering Zuko, Ty Lee, Mai, and Azula out of the room. He gave a small wave of goodbye to the Sand siblings before closing the door to their room. All right, people, go about your business, he told everyone in the corridor. Azula, I have something to check on. He turned away from them and walking away. You, Naruto? Azula called out, blushing harder now. He stopped and looked back at her. What? Would you like to, go out tonight and... She struggled to say the words. It shouldn't be this hard to say a few words, Agni, take it. What? Have dinner together? She asked him, the words rushing out of her mouth. To say Naruto was caught off guard would have probably been an understatement. Oh, sure, it would be my pleasure. I'll come by your room in about 4 hours, okay? He offered. Azula just nodded, already embarrassed. He walked away, his face calm. On the inside, however, his brain was almost on shutdown. What just happened? Congratulations, Kit, you just got asked out on a date, the QB told him, before wiping a fake tear away. They grow up so fast. Oh, shut up, furball. He yelled at the fox. 4 hours later, he looked at the mirror, checking his reflection. It's weird, he said mostly to himself. I've killed more men than I would want to count in the 3 years of war I've been in, and I've never flinched. Now a girl that I know has asked me out to dinner, and I'm almost freaking out. What do you mean, almost? The QB asked his Jinchuriki with a raised eyebrow, Not now, Kyubi, the blonde replied. I'm nervous here. I can tell. I've never been asked out before. No, of course, they usually try to rape you. You're not helping. If anything, the fox was making it worse. Relax, you making it sound more horrifying than it is. I have seen this kind of thing more times than I can count, both receiving and asking. Receiving and asking? His Jinchuriki asked, unsure of what his Biju meant. My last host got asked out so many times, it was getting old, the fox began to explain. But the one time she tried to ask someone out herself, she was stammering and stuttering so hard, I was howling with laughter. In the end, she couldn't say it, so the guy asked her out himself. Who was your last host? He had learned that he was not the first host of the Kyubi back when the fox was training him. He had also learned the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, was his father. He had taken it rather well, mainly because he had never known the man, and he couldn't blame him for what he did. They had never discussed who the previous hosts were. Oh, my last host was. The fox mumbled. I'm going to have to be honest with you, Gaki. You've already met her. I have? When did I meet her? He turned away from the mirror and walked to the door. Do you remember the woman you saw after you got out of the swamp? Yeah, that was her? He asked as he reached out for the handle. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki and she was your mother. His hand was gripped on the handle when that bombshell was dropped. She was what? I am not repeating myself. Are you telling me I drew a sword the ghost of my mother? The blonde demanded because it sure sounded like that. Yes, the Biju answered with a bored sigh. Great, that's just great. He opened the door and walked out of the room. You're taking it well, the Kyubi said as the blonde walked down the hallway to Azula's room. I thought you would have been yelling at me for holding that back or for letting you draw your sword. How am I supposed to feel, Kyubi? He asked. I never met my mother, so I don't know what she was like. Do you want me to tell you about her? The fox offered. He shook his head. No. What's the point, really? Hearing about her from another person doesn't mean I'll be able to meet her. You said the same thing about your father. I was right then, and I'm right now. The conversation stopped after that. He walked through the palace in silence, until he reached the door to Azula's room. Raising a hand, he knocked on the door. It opened and he saw Azula. She had let her hair down from her bun and wore it in a high loose ponytail. She wore the dress that Tai Li had bought for back at Kozan. It was a cheongsam, the kind which went all the way down, but had slits in the sides that showed glimpses of her legs, which worked for her. The coloring was of a rose red, but the designs were both gold and creme. The design that was creme was that of a lotus flower blossoming at the bottom of the dress. The other design was a golden phoenix spreading its wings, ready to fly. The phoenix was placed on the upper side of the dress, off to the side, the wings encircling her bust. The two designs were connected by several threads that would gradually change from gold to creme, and would also flow around the dress. The two were separated by a belt around her waist that held two sheathed daggers. Naruto just looked at her. Whoa, he thought to himself. It was the only thing he could even think of. Well? Azula asked, blushing hard. She had been embarrassed when Tai Li had bought the dress and she was embarrassed now. If her father saw her in this dress, she was sure she would be dead. Congratulations, Azula, he finally managed to speak. You have just redefined the phrase lady in the killer dress. She smirked, enjoying the compliment. It helped her feel less embarrassed. What are the daggers for? So, I don't have to firebend while we're out, she answered. There was probably a good chance that someone would try to attack them, and if she used firebending, more people would be alerted. She looked at Naruto. His attire was black. He wore a formal shirt that was fully buttoned up and tucked in, but had the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, leaving his forearms bare, save for a small tattoo on his wrist, a kanji. On his left pants leg was the symbol of the Fire Nation. But the color was not red, it was silver. They looked at each other for a few seconds, creating an almost awkward air between them. "Shall we go?" Naruto finally asked, offering his arm. She nodded, took the offered arm, and the two of them walked away. Down on the opposite end of the corridor, Zuko, Mai, and Ty Lee were watching from a corner. "Why are we doing this?" Mai asked. "Oh, come on," Ty Lee said back. "You're not interested in how things will go. I really don't want to be fried to a crisp." That was what would be awaiting them if Azula found out they were doing this. "What about you, Zuko?" the acrobat asked the scarred dragon. "Just leave them alone, Ty Lee," he told her. "You wouldn't want anyone watching you on your date, right?" "You guys are no fun," she said with a pout. "Welcome back to the old badger mole, Master Naruto," the waiter at the entrance greeted them. "If you follow me, I will take you to your table." "Table." He walked away and they followed. "He seems to know you quite well," Azula whispered as they made their way through all the tables and people in the restaurant. She wasn't sure if people could tell who she was just by looking at her, but she also wasn't focusing on it. "That's what happens when you come often and tip well," he whispered back. "Here you are, sir and madam," the waiter announced as they arrived at the table. "May I assume you wish to have the usual order?" he asked the blonde. He nodded. "And make it 2 orders." He gestured to Azula. "Very good, sir," the waiter said before bowing and walking away. They sat down at the table. "So, who put you up to it, Mai or Ty Lee?" he finally asked her, looking at the dress she was wearing. She scowled at him, but also lightly blushed. Ty Lee, at first, then Mai joined in. When the two decided something for her, she had no say in the matter. He chuckled. "They mean well. They wouldn't be your friends anyway else." She didn't say anything, she just looked at him. "Azula, what's the matter? Who are you?" He was confused by her words. "What do you mean? Who are you?" She repeated herself. "I'm Naruto, your bodyguard." "Maybe, but who are you? What is this all about?" "You know who I am." "No, I don't. Those people who were with the Avatar know you better than I do. Why won't you tell me who you are?" He looked away. "I came here for a new start, to turn over a new leaf." He turned his head back to her. "I came to these lands so I could leave my past behind me." "But why do you have to hide things from me?" "Because there are things I don't want you to know. Some things were best left in the dark. Like his past, how many he had lost, and what he did when he lost control. Like the fact you thought you were a demon when you were a child?" She asked him, getting his attention right away. "How did you?" He was shocked that she knew that. He had kept that a secret from her and the others ever since he had come to this side of the planet. "Back in the swamp, I saw a vision of you as a child. You were so scared of me." She looked straight into his eyes. "What happened to you?" "It was a long time ago," he said shortly. "Please, Naruto." She kept her gaze on him. He was silent for a minute, but he couldn't keep her gaze. "There was an incident when I was born," he finally said. "As a result, the village lost its leader and many lives. Because I was born on the same day, they took it out on me. You were beaten, weren't you? More times than you could count. I couldn't go to the hospital either, they would just kick me out." He gave a cynical laugh. "You learned how to set a broken arm and leg quickly when you go through that." It was then the waiter came back. "Your meal, sir," he said before placing 2 dishes in front of them. Naruto nodded his thanks and tipped the waiter with 5 gold pieces. The waiter bowed again and walked away. They were silent for a few seconds. "I'm sorry I kept things from you, Azula," he said. "But I didn't want you to know about them." "You don't trust me?" She was a little insulted that after 3 years, he didn't trust her. I want to protect you, he clarified. It's my job after all. Protect me from what? She wanted to know. Do you remember Itachi Uchiha and his partner? She nodded. I was trying to protect you from them. But why were they after you? She didn't know the reason, and she wanted to. I can't answer that. But one of the main reasons I came here was to avoid them. He looked down at the dish in front of him. It looked delicious, and he was ready to eat. Azula gave her bodyguard a long look. Are you ever going to tell your secrets? His hand was reaching for a pair of chopsticks when she asked the question. Maybe, one day, he said quietly. But for now, let's enjoy this food. He picked up the chopsticks and began to eat his meal. Azula followed his example. This is quite good, she said after taking a bite. He smiled. The head cook will be pleased to know the princess of the Fire Nation enjoyed his food. He takes it very personally when someone doesn't like it or doesn't eat it. It's a popular theory that he's actually a metalbender. She scoffed at the notion. There was no such thing as a metalbender. That's nonsense. That's what I thought, until the day I saw a frying pan come flying out of the kitchen and nail someone who had insulted his food right on his head. Did you ever think that maybe the chief has good aim? He just gave her a look. Azula, the time that passed between the head chef and the kitchen hearing the insult and the frying pan hitting the customer was about 5 seconds. Also add in the fact that you would have to make 2 turns to get to the kitchen from the main dining area. The look on her face was one of disbelief. You have got to be kidding, she protested. Trust me, it happened. I was having lunch with the guy who insulted the food. Zuko tried to meditate but couldn't concentrate. He finally gave it up when he heard knocking on the door. What is it? He called out as he stood up. There's someone here to see you, sir, the soldier outside his room said. She says that she knows you. Let her in. The door opened and Jean walked in. Hello, Lee, she said quietly, not making eye contact with him. Jean? What are you doing here? After that one date they had, they didn't really see each other. I came to tell you something. She gave him a look. Are you really Prince Zuko? He sighed. Yeah, I am. I'm sorry for lying. It doesn't matter now. You don't have a lot of time, she said with an urgent voice. What do you mean? Before the incident today, there were a group of people who were talking about taking care of the problem the city has. I didn't think anything of it, but later today, the same group was there at the tea shop. They said that they were ready to kill the royal whore and her guard dog. Azula and Naruto, he said, realizing what was going to happen. The 2 of them were going to be ambushed. They left without any guards. He started to swear as he reached for the Dao swords hanging off the wall next to the bed. Guards. He called out. Yes, sir. The guards barked out as the 2 of them came into the room. I want you to escort this woman back to her home. Then I want you to go to the nearest Fire Nation base and rouse as many soldiers as you can. If anyone questions your orders, tell them Prince Zuko ordered it. I want you to take them out into the agrarian zone, he ordered them. Is that understood? Yes, sir. He ran past Jean and the soldiers, going out the door and bolted down the corridor. He first went to the room that Mai and Ty Lee shared and banged on the door. Zuko? Asked Ty Lee as she opened the door. What do you want? Grab Mai and meet me at the front of the royal palace. He told her before running away again, leaving a confused acrobat. He ran down to the Sand siblings' room and banged on their door too. What is the matter with you? Kankuro asked as he opened the door. You couldn't have waited another minute? I was winning here. Listen, the 3 of you have to come with me right now. No arguments, we have to go now. He said when he saw that Kankuro was about to protest. He ran for the front of the palace where he saw that Mai and Ty Lee were already there. What is going on, Zuko? Mai asked. She had never seen him act like this before, but then again, it had been 3 years. That's something I would like to know too, Temari said as she and her brothers joined them. The three of them had been playing a card game when Zuko banged on their door. Naruto and Azula are going to be ambushed. They're going to be attacked in the agrarian zone, he finally told them. We have to go. They all saw how that was bad. When Zuko went down the steps, they followed. Why were they going to the agrarian zone? Gaara asked as they raced down the stairs. Azula wanted to go see a family member. The two walked in silence in the agrarian zone. After finishing dinner, they took a carriage to the inner wall, and then out to the agrarian zone. After coming to the general vicinity they left the carriage and walked. They soon came upon the hill where Lu Ten was buried. They walked up and looked at the single tree at the top. Azula looked at the tree in silence. It's strange, she said. When I first heard that Lu Ten had died, I only cared about if my uncle had continued the siege. But now it seems like I can't walk through Ba Sing Se without seeing something that reminds me of him. It was almost seeing a ghost that faded when her eyes look at him. I never met him, Naruto told her. What was he like? Much like Uncle, easygoing and cheerful. She smiled sadly. He was carefree, but when he had to, he could show that he was the son of the Dragon of the West. He probably would have made a particularly good Fire Lord. They stood in silence for another minute. Come on, Naruto said. Let's walk for a bit. She nodded. They walked down the hill and through the fields. Away from the city, everything was quiet. To the both of them, it was something of a relief. After a while, they stopped and looked up at the moon. It's full, he commented. I wonder what tipped you off about it, she replied, some of the old sarcasm coming back into her voice. He looked at her and smiled. There it is. I was getting a little concerned about your lack of sarcasm. She tried to scowl at him, but she couldn't hold it and began to laugh. He joined her, and they spent a few minutes laughing. Hey, Naruto, Azula said after they stopped laughing. Had you ever heard the legend of Moonfire? No, I think I missed that one, he answered. But then again, I'm surprised that the Fire Nation would even have a legend about the moon. It's not really spoken out loud anymore, not since my great-grandfather started this war. I learned about it at the Royal Fire Academy for girls from the older students. What's it about? She took a step closer to him. Legend has it that the moon fire is a gift given to women firebenders by the moon spirit. Moon fire was something that could only be used under the gaze of the moon. It was also not something that was to be used on the battlefield. Then what was it used for? She smirked and took another step towards him with a sway in her hips. It was used to seduce men. When a woman used moon fire, she could make men walking by stop and watch her. And if she used it on the man she loved, he would not be able to take his eyes off her. He smiled at her. Princess Azula, if I didn't know any better, I would say you were trying to use moon fire on me. She smirked and took another step towards him. No. Supposedly, if you wanted to use moon fire, there was a dance you had to do. Besides, I don't think I need moon fire. Do you? His breath hitched. Standing underneath the light of the moon, Azula was gorgeous. Gorgeous. Her golden eyes seemed to twinkle in the dark. Her pale skin glowed like alabaster, and her black hair framed her face perfectly. Before he could answer, she took another step forward and kissed him full on the lips. He was caught off guard by it. Azula was not the one to just kiss you without warning, she wasn't the one to kiss you, period. He was reluctant for a few seconds, but then he surrendered and returned the kiss. They stood there, under the moonlight, with their eyes closed, sharing a kiss. Azula was the first to break the kiss. She took a step back and looked at her bodyguard, a faint blush on her cheeks. Naruto just looked at her. No, I don't think you do, he finally said. She smiled at his answer. Get down! He suddenly cried, grabbing her arm and pulling her down to the ground. A large rock sailed harmlessly over their heads. Bringing their heads up, they saw that they were surrounded by a large group of Earth Kingdom citizens and guards. Kill the whore and her dog. One of the citizens screamed out. Naruto's eyes went flat and hard when he heard him. Do you want me to gut that one? He asked his princess. We're being ambushed here, Naruto, she replied, her hands going for the daggers. I know. And when the ambush party tried to attack them, he touched the tattoo on his wrist, muttered a quick kai. And a small cloud of smoke appeared. When the smoke dissipated, his Jin was in his hands. He sidestepped a war hammer strike and buried his fist in the wielder's stomach and sliced the man's head off. Azula drew out the daggers, parried a sword strike with one and sliced open the person's stomach, spilling his guts. Standing up, she stabbed another in the chest. Meanwhile, Naruto placed himself in an air-bending stance and kept moving around his opponent, getting around to their backs and stabbing them. Azula, he said as he dodged a rock spike. We don't have time to be polite. Polite. Scorch the bastards. My hands are kinda full here. She shouted back. Then use your feet. You have two of them. She ducked under a swing of an axe and retaliated by plunging her daggers into her attacker's neck. Thinking that she was open, another charged at her, his sword held high. Azula noticed what was coming, raised her foot and bent a stream of fire from it, roasting the attacker. More of the ambush party joined the fight, which forced Naruto and Azula to move around, that way they wouldn't be blocked in. Naruto moved through the attackers using air bending and water bending. He dodged, sidestepped, deflected, blocked, and when the attacker was surprised for a moment, that was when he went for the kill. Azula moved through them using flips, cartwheels and high jumps. She learned a few things from Ty Lee. While she did this, she used both her daggers and her fire bending to full use. Her hands danced with the daggers, slicing and stabbing the enemy, while her legs and feet sent streams of fire as well as fireballs out as well, burning her attackers. As the ambush went on, her movements got more and more acrobatic. Whoa, Naruto thought as he watched Azula bend backwards into a handstand in order to stab an opponent in the feet, and then do the splits, bending two streams of fire, setting two different attackers ablaze. I didn't know she could do that. When did she get that flexible? Kit, get your mind out of the gutter and back into the fight. The QB chastised him. Then he took a look at her. She does have a nice ass to look at though, I'll admit that. Hey! If I can't ogle her, then you can't either. He shouted at the fox before returning to the fight. Agni, Azula thought as she took a look at Naruto. He looks like he belongs on the battlefield. It's almost intoxicating to watch him. She shook her head hard. Not the time for that, Azula. Pay attention. On the outskirts of the battle, everyone saw a fireball go up. But it wasn't the blue fire Azula wielded, it was an ordinary flame. While everyone's attention was on that, sand burst out of the ground and cleared a lane in the circle surrounding the two. Are we interrupting? Gaara asked as he, his siblings, Zuko, Mai, and Ty Lee joined them. When did you get a sense of humor? Naruto asked back lightly. Now is not the time, Kankuro told him as he revealed his new puppet, Sasori, Scorpion. Are you two okay? Zuko asked Azula and Naruto. We're fine, Zuzu, Azula told him. You sound aggravated, Mai noted. She was. These rockheads couldn't have waited 5 more minutes before ambushing us. Oh, details later, Ty Lee said. She smelt something juicy to talk and gossip about. Ladies! Shouted Temari. Focus please. She readied her fan. Mai readied her knives and Zuko drew his swords. They turned the tables on the ambush. The Sand siblings worked in tandem. Kankuro used his new puppet to disable, Temari used her fan to send them flying and Gaara used his sand to crush them. Mai would throw her knives and Zuko would attack when the knives hit. Azula and Ty Lee worked together using their acrobatics to disable, kill, and flambe. Naruto worked alone in the fight, but that was because if he need help, all he had to do was create a Kage Bunshin. His Tsuinken was a great help in taking enemies down. Soon enough, the ambush was over, but not in the ambusher's favor. That was boring, Mai stated as she put her knives away. But it's still over, Ty Lee said cheerfully. The attackers lay on the ground all around them, either dead or fully paralyzed. Damn, not enough time to fully test Sasori, Kankuro muttered. There were still some things he wanted to test out. Oh, relax. You still have that spar with Naruto, Temari told him as she folded her fan. Naruto looked at the bodies of either dead or unconscious ambushers. This was too easy. What do you mean? Azula asked him. This ambush, there were only civilians who only had a basic knowledge of weaponry or earthbending and low-ranking guards. Why would they try to ambush us if they knew we could beat them with time? Not unless. His eyes went wide. Not unless they were nothing but fodder. This wasn't the ambush. Holes in the ground popped open and out flew more people. However, the difference was that these people were of high ranks in the military and of the nobility, and that they were prepared for this. I will admit, a low-ranking general with an expensive armor said, we weren't expecting the others to show up. But it showed us what they could do. And now, we will destroy you. Kill them. They charged, but unlike the last one, which charged like a stampede, this charge was coordinated. Those wielding pole weapons went for Ty Lee, Azula, and the Sand siblings. The ones wielding hammers and axes went for Kankuro, Mai, and Zuko. The ones that wielded swords went for Naruto, Temari, Ty Lee, Azula, and Zuko. And the earthbenders separated them doing what they did best. For Naruto and his group, things got both worse and complicated. They knew how to fight against the ones that came at them, but they were many. They also had to deal with salvos of rocks, earth columns, and stone spikes from the earthbenders, who were controlled and precise. Every time they tried to regroup, the earthbenders would separate by bending rock lines at them, forcing them back. They started to work against those who fought them. Gaara started to use his sand to break the shafts of the pole weapons. While Azula went after them with fireballs and dagger strikes, Ty Lee got in close and blocked their chi, disabling them. Kankuro made sure that both he and Sasori stayed out of reach of the hammer and axe swings, while Zuko and Mai got in close and took them out. Zuko also dealt with the swordsman, as did Temari. He used his Dao swords, and she used her fan. When they were dazed, Naruto moved in and killed them. But despite what they tried to, they were tiring. Kami, take it. Kankuro swore as he ducked under an axe swing. This is going nowhere. We're outnumbered here. Not a problem, Naruto replied. He brought his hands into a hand seal. But before he could do anything, the leader shouted, now. Do it. The earthbenders banded together and, as one, bent a wall of stone up from the earth, separating Azula from the others. It towered over them, too tall for the shinobi and former shinobi to climb over quickly. Bind her. A voice on the other side of the wall ordered. They heard fire bending, weapons clashing, and then the sound of something knocking someone out. Zuko, make a hole. Naruto ordered as he tried to fight his way to the wall. Zuko steadied himself and projected an image of himself in his mind. Thankfully, during his time in Ba Sing Se, he hadn't slacked on this kind of training. He was able to split himself into his yin and yang. He then brought them back together, reforming them into himself. Naruto, get down. As Naruto fell to the ground, he took a deep breath and then breathed lightning. It tore through both the attackers and the wall, blasting a good chunk out of it. While the wall was tall, it wasn't really thick. The end result was a hole in the wall that you could easily step through. That was when they saw an unconscious Azula, her hands cuffed together by rocks, by the edge of a cliff that was not there before. The earthbenders had bent a large crack in the earth. It was so deep that you could not see the bottom of it. The Earth Kingdom noble who was holding Azula turned to see Naruto standing at the hole in the wall. He smirked, turned back around and, borrowing strength from the earth, hurled the unconscious princess off the cliff. Azula! Azula! Screamed Naruto, getting the attention of the others. He ran towards the edge and threw himself after her. His grip on his Jian loosened and the sword was suddenly yanked out of his hand by gravity, falling into the abyss. What an idiot, one of the men said with a snort. He was suddenly killed when sand covered his entire head and crushed it. Gaara, can you reach him? Temari asked as she joined her brother at the edge while the others came through the hole and attacked the ambushers. They're falling too fast. My sand won't reach them. He answered. He and everyone else turned their attention back to the enemy and attacked with fury. Even Ty Lee went for the kill, using her chi blocking abilities to stop the heart. While they tried to rip those who ambushed them to shreds, Naruto was falling down after Azula. He angled his body so he could faster and reached her sooner. I have her. He thought in triumph as he grabbed hold of her and pulled her into a hug-like embrace. Great going, Kit, the Kyuubi said. Now what are you going to do? They were still falling to their deaths. He looked at the cliff walls. Despite gaining better control over his chakra, he knew that he would not be able to land safely on the walls. If he tried to do that, there was an incredibly good chance of losing his grip on Azula. Also, if that didn't happen, the added weight would slow him down when he tried to run up the wall. I only have one option, he said as he bit his thumb. You realize that if you do that, they'll be able to find you, right? The fox asked him. There was a reason his Jinchuriki hadn't used the jutsu in 3 years. We really don't have a choice here. It's either them or splatting. And I don't feel like splatting, do you? He went through the hand seals. It had been more than 3 years since he had used this jutsu, but he could still remember what to do. Kuchiyos no Jutsu, summoning technique. He cried out, holding his hand out in front of him. Chakra poured out from his hand and created a large cloud of smoke. Readjusting so that his feet were downwards instead of his head, he fell through the smoke and landed on a familiar head. What in the name of the great toad sage is this? Gamabunta, chief of the toads of Mount Mayaboku, roared as he held onto the cliff sides. Jiraiya, where are you? Is this your idea of a joke? Long time no see, Chief Toad, Naruto said, holding the unconscious Azula in his arms like a bride. She was still unconscious, but now she was safe in his arms. Gamabunta froze. He hadn't heard that voice in 3 years. Naruto, is that you? Who else would summon you while falling to a death not wanted? The blonde demanded before looking back up. Listen, since you're here, can you help me? I need to stop a fight before my friends get killed. The giant toad was silent for a few seconds. Very well, but you and I are going to have a talk later, he said. What exactly did you have in mind? Naruto smirked. Shock and awe, he answered. The chief of the toads smirked as well. Shifting his weight, he launched himself upwards. The fight was not going well for Zuko and the others. Despite aiming to kill, they were tiring. Sasori had taken a beating and was moving sluggishly, since a pike managed to nick Kankuro's left arm, making it painful to move and leaving only his right arm to operate the puppet. Mai was on her last 2 knives, which she kept in hand. Ty Lee was slowing down. She couldn't keep doing her acrobatic moves. Zuko's Dao swords had been destroyed when a hammer strike knocked them out of his hands and a stone spike shattered them. Temari's fan had some holes in it, so she was forced to fold it up and use it like a club. The only one who didn't look tired was Gaara. He kept using his sand to defend the others. I don't think we're going to last much longer, Kankuro said as he tried to steer Sasori to another attacker. Thanks for stating the obvious, Mai said as she plunged a dagger into her opponent's head. Focus, Zuko told her as he bent fireball after fireball at the enemy. It was then a large shadow fell over them, blocking out the moon. What is that? Ty Lee screamed, near hysteric. That is a toad, Gaara said as he looked up to see what it was. We'll be fine. How are we fine? That thing is huge. I know that particular toad. Gamabunta landed on the wall, demolishing it. It was big, he is bigger, and squashing those who were still on the other side. The battle completely stopped as they stared at the giant toad. Well, kid, what do you want to do with them? Gamabunta asked the blonde on his head. First things first, Naruto said. He looked at one of the nobles. That one threw Azula off the cliff. Extend him the same courtesy, please. The toad opened his mouth and shot his long tongue at the noble, who tried to run and failed. He caught him and lifted him off of the ground. He struggled to get out of the tongue's grip, but couldn't even move. You can't do this to me. Do you not realize who I am? He demanded. Neither Naruto nor Gamabunta said anything. Gamabunta just let go of the noble, letting him fall like a stone and nowhere close to either cliff side. His screams grew more distant the further he fell, until they could no longer hear him. Anyone else want to follow him? Gamabunta demanded, glaring down at the rest of the ambush party. They responded by dropping any weapons they had and bowing to the giant toad. I thought not. Oh look, the cavalry, Naruto said as he looked from atop Gamabunta's head. Reinforcements were indeed coming, but they were rather particularly late. He leapt down to the ground and landed in front of Zuko. Zuko, get her back to the royal palace. He told the scarred dragon, giving him Azula. I'll send word to the Dai Li to have a protection detail waiting for you. He made a clone, which sprinted towards the inner wall. Where are you going? Zuko asked. To have a talk with him, he answered, pointing to the giant toad behind him. He leapt back on top of Gamabunta's head, who then hopped away. The leaps he took were large and within a few seconds, he had disappeared. Prince Zuko, sir. The two guards who were at his door greeted him with salutes as they stopped in front of him. You're late, he said. Our apologies, sir, but there were delays when we reached the base, the first guard quickly explained. Zuko nodded, accepting the answer for now. I want these people to be thrown into jail. Their fate will be decided later. He gestured the Earth Kingdom citizens. The soldiers saluted and went to work. Zuko and the others started to walk back to the inner wall, a small detachment of soldiers following them. They had finally stopped near the mountains in the agrarian zone. So, what did you want to talk about? Naruto asked as he stood on the toad's nose, looking him in the eyes. You know damn well what I want to talk about, Gamabunta all but growled. Fine, then I'll get right to the point. I'm not going back. Kid, you're in danger, the toad told him. Konoha is the safest place for you. I've been in danger for the last 3 years and yet I survived, he retorted. Besides, I want nothing to do with Konoha. It was a prison then, and it would still be a prison now. There are people who miss you, Naruto. He barked out a harsh laugh. Now I know you're lying. No one would miss me. If anything, I'd think that they would glad I left. He was sure of it. That's enough. Gamabunta declared. There are people who care for you. Do you know how long Jiraiya searched for you after you escaped? How many times Tsunade sent out teams of shinobi to look for you? How many times the Konoha 11? Shut up! Naruto unexpectedly roared. If Jiraiya cared about me, he would have been there for me when I was little and scared. If Tsunade cared about me, she never would have agreed to that ridiculous plan. If the Konoha 11 actually cared about me, they would have never doubted me and called me a joke. They never cared about me. Yes, they did. Gamabunta roared back. They have always cared about you. Stop lying to me. Just stop it. He knew that they never cared about him, and neither did the Hokage. They just wanted him because Konoha was the only one who didn't have a Jinchuriki. He was sick of it. He just wanted to be left alone. Was that too much to ask for? The two of them were silent for a couple of minutes. "You're still in danger here, kid," Gamabunta finally said. "Jiraiya got word that the Akatsuki had started hunting you again." "Itachi and Kisame found me already," the blonde replied. "I gave them a warning not to come after me." It was a bluff, but the toad didn't need to know that little tidbit of information. "What? Don't give me that, Gamabunta," he said. "I know for a fact that the old hag would send any information she had on to the super pervert, and I also know that he would pass that information on to you. That way, you would be prepared in case I ever summoned you. It's just the way they would operate." Gamabunta said nothing in reply. He just grunted and blew smoke. They stayed like for a few minutes, in the silence of the night. "That was a pretty girl you were holding. Is she your girlfriend?" he finally asked. She's the princess of the Fire Nation. You know that already, and you also know that I'm her bodyguard." Why was he asking questions he already knew the answer to? Was it just to annoy him? "You still didn't answer my question," the toad replied with a smirk. "Well, we were on a date tonight," he admitted. "That was before we were ambushed." "Way to go, kid. How many have you gone on?" "Only this one," he answered. "Usually, any girl I meet tries to jump my bones, screaming that they want my children." "You have fangirls?" Gamabunta asked in surprise before bellowing out with laughter. "Oh, that is rich. Who would have ever thought that the Deadlast would get fangirls?" He knew that if Jiraiya was here, he would be laughing too. "You're just proving my point," Naruto said quietly. It was that kind of stuff that showed they didn't really think of him the way they thought they did. The laughter died from the toad boss's lip almost instantly. "You're adamant about this, aren't you?" "I'm not a kid anymore, Gamabunta. I can take care of myself. I have a life here. I have friends here. Hell, I have enemies here. Do you realize how refreshing it is to have enemies that aren't related in any way, shape, or form to the village and are completely your own?" Yeah, I can. I'm not going to let the village ruin what I have here. He had earned what he got on this side of the planet, and he wasn't going to let anyone take all that away from him. "And yet, you're okay with being with the Kazekage and his family," Gamabunta noted. It seemed like a contradiction to him. "He's a friend," he retorted. "Besides, he's on vacation." "How did you find out about the block?" That was something that'd been bugging the clan ever since they discovered they couldn't reverse summon him to MT Mayaboku. "How do you think I found out?" He looked the toad straight in the eye. "Gamabunta, I want your oath that both you and the Toad clan will leave me alone from now on." "Kid. I want your oath, Gamabunta," the blonde cut him off. "If you don't and you try to reverse summon me, I will burn your home to the ground, and I will kill everyone there." "You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't kill Gamakichi or Gamatatsu." "Everyone there," he repeated, completely serious. "Very well. You have my oath." "Thank you." He jumped off the toad's head and onto the ground. "You're right, kid," Gamabunta said. "You have changed." He disappeared in a huge cloud of smoke. Naruto simply looked at the quickly dissipating smoke and walked away. "Well, that was interesting to watch," Kisame remarked as they walked down the street. "I don't think I ever seen a date go bad that spectacularly." "You're forgetting that one time in IWA," Itachi replied. "Oh, for Kami's sake, not this again," he groaned. "I've told you before. I had never known that woman. She was drunk and almost incoherent. Besides, she was flirting with you. We ended up in a massive fight with all the men of that town because of that woman. Then we had to run away from the women of the town in our underwear," the Uchiha told his partner. "Don't remind me, please." After informing their leader about Naruto, Itachi's and Kisame's orders were to stay back and observe him. They had lost track of him in the Siwang Desert, so they decided to follow the Avatar's group. While they dealt with the drill, the two members snuck into the city. They kept their distance but still kept an eye out on them. They were surprised when they saw the Kazekage was still alive, but was even more surprising was when they watched the fight in the Crystal Catacombs and saw that Shuyi was indeed Naruto. "You have to admit, the kid has gotten very good," Kisame noted. He had watched the blonde fight, and he was a little impressed by what he saw. "Indeed, but he is still learning," Itachi said. "He never saw that lightning strike, nor did he notice our presence in the catacombs." Report, the voice of Akatsuki's leader rang in their minds. They kept walking, making their way back to the inn they were staying at. When they reached their rooms and sat down on the floor, they started to concentrate, closing their eyes. When they reopened them, the image of the Akatsuki's leader stood before them. "Report," he repeated. They quickly told him everything they had seen after tracking the Avatar's group. "It was something to see, really," Kisame told him. "He's quite the little trickster." The leader said nothing. He just stared at the two. "What of the Konoha shinobi?" "We are uncertain about what happened to them after they were taken away," Itachi said. "But we have debated and have concluded that Naruto will have imprisoned them, and then manipulate them into leaving. As far as we can tell, he will be heading back to the Fire Nation soon." "Are we to follow?" "No," he answered. "If you follow him, eventually he will notice you. You are to return to the elemental countries via seal." "So, we're just going to leave the kid here?" Kisame asked, confused about the leader's decision. "Do not worry, Kisame. Sooner or later, whether of his own violation or not, the Kyuubi will come to us." They couldn't exactly say, but it seemed the ghostly image of the Akatsuki's leader was smirking. When Azula awoke, she lunged forward with fire in her hands. "Take it easy, Azula," Zuko told her, standing at the edge of her bed. He had stayed in the room, waiting for her to wake so they could talk. "What happened?" she asked, dispelling the fire. "The last thing I remember was a sense of falling. You were thrown off the edge of the cliff and Naruto saved you," he said, deciding to omit the part of the giant toad. "He's standing guard outside, in case you're wondering." "Well, that is his job." She looked at her silent brother. "What's the matter, little Zuzu?" she asked, using the nickname she knew he hated. "We need to talk, Azula," he said, completely serious. "Somebody set up that ambush. Who do you think arranged it?" "Oh, I have an idea," she all but snarled. There was only one person who could manipulate people on that kind of scale into trying to kill her. "Yao Jing," he said, voicing her thoughts. "Yeah," she agreed. "How did you figure it out?" "Those reinforcements I had sent for arrived later than they should have been. The guards told me that they were delayed. The officers said they had to double-check their story. That should never have happened. If any soldier comes in with orders from the royal family, they're to be carried out immediately. The only reason I can think of being stonewalled like that was Yao Jing got to the officers first, which means she didn't come up with this idea on the spot. She's probably been waiting for this chance." The two siblings remembered what she had said in the throne. "I saw a chance and took it." Both Zuko and Azula realized that she wasn't exactly talking about the Avatar, and that she was still seeing chances. "Azula," Zuko began. "We both know that you and I disagree on a lot of things, but one of the things we can agree on is that Yao Jing would be happy to see us dead. So, from now on, when it concerns her, we watch each other's back." He held out his hand. "What say you?" Azula looked at her brother. "Agreed," she said, taking his hand. Location, Konoha. Tsunade sat at her desk, looking out through the window. She was taking a small break from her work and reached for the sake, yet. "Lady Tsunade," Shizun said, coming through the door and into the office. "The teams from the bending countries are back." She turned back to her desk. Send them in, she ordered. Shizu nodded and walked out the door again. A few seconds later, Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai came in with their teams behind them. They wore an expression of defeat on their faces. Tsunade looked at them in silence. What happened? She finally asked. Asuma stepped forward. The mission failed, Lady Tsunade. The Avatar has been killed and the Earth Kingdom has fallen, he said to her. What of the Kazekage? She asked almost immediately. If the head of Sunagakure was dead on their watch, they were going to be facing huge problems. Guy walked forward. This was found in my headband, he said, putting a piece of paper in front of her. She picked up the piece of paper and read it. To the old hag. Gaara is fine. He will not be a prisoner. In fact, I think it's safe to say that he and his siblings will become guests of the Fire Nation. After all, he's on vacation. Naruto. She read the paper once more before crumpling it up. I want a full report from each and every one of you, she said, dismissing them. They nodded and left, leaving the Hokage alone. Location, Ba Sing Se. Iroh sat in his cell. It had been over a day since Naruto had visited him. He could that it was afternoon due to the amount of light shining from the window. The door opened and two Dai Li agents stepped inside. What is it? Did my niece already call for my death? Iroh asked with a little humor in his voice. The agents said nothing. One of them came forward and placed a bundle of clothing next to him. Put this on. Knock on the door when you are done, he said. The two agents walked out of the cell and closed the door. Iroh took the bundle and opened it, revealing white clothes, morning clothes. He wasn't quite sure where this was going, but he put on the clothes. When he was done, he knocked on the cell door. Follow us, the agent said, opening the door. They escorted Iroh out of the dungeons and out of the palace. They walked him down the steps and into a carriage. The carriage took him through the city, to the inner wall, and then out to the agrarian zone. When it finally came to a stop, the place outside the window was familiar. The door opened and Iroh stepped out to see Azula, Ty Lee, Mai, Zuko, and Naruto, as well as a small contingent of soldiers standing beneath a familiar hill. The soldiers wore formal armor while the others wore morning clothes. Naruto wore black instead of white. Welcome, uncle, Azula greeted him with genuine politeness and kindness in her voice. What is this all about, Azula? He asked her. Take a look. He looked at where she pointed. At the top of the hill, at the base of the tree, was a statue of Lu Ten in a meditative position. His eyes were closed, his hands were cupped, and he had a content smile on his face. They all walked up the hill in silence, their feet walking the steps of a slow, formal march. As they stopped and stood in front of the statue, Zuko spoke. The Fire Nation has done what no one has thought possible, it has conquered Ba Sing Se. But instead of celebrating our victory over the Earth Kingdom, we are here to remember and honor those who've fallen in battle during the siege of Ba Sing Se, especially my cousin, Lu Ten. It is both my sister's and my wish that whenever people will see this statue, they will not remember the victory, but the soldiers we lost to achieve victory. Uncle, Azula said with a surprisingly gentle tone in her voice. Will you ignite the flame? Iroh said nothing. He just walked forward, bending a small orb of fire in his hand. He placed the orb in the statue's cupped hands. It took hold and turned into a small fire, not something that was used for battle, but to provide light and warmth. We remember and thank those who have served the Fire Nation, his niece said for all those on the hill to hear. We remember and thank. The soldiers repeated, bowing their heads to the statue. A sorrowful tune began to play. It was a tune that every soldier knew, and they sung along with it. Leaves from the vine, falling so slow. Like fragile, tiny shells, drifting in the foam. Little soldier boy, come marching home, they sang in a slow voice. Brave soldier boy, comes marching home, Iroh finished, tears falling freely from his eyes. Night had fallen. After the small ceremony, Iroh was brought back to the prison. There had been no fuss or attempts to escape. The Dragon of the West went peacefully. The rest of the day was spent by everyone going about their business, readying things to go home before finally retiring to sleep. Naruto slept lightly in his room. He had chosen the room next to Azula, so he knew she would be safe. When he heard the door to his room, he was awake and slowly reaching for the knife he had strapped behind the bed frame. "Naruto?" called out Azula. He relaxed, bringing his hand away from the knife. "Can't sleep?" he asked, raising his head to look at her, seeing her silhouetted against the door. She nodded. He lifted the covers slightly. She walked over and got in, laying her head against his chest. "Good night," he said, his arms looping around her and holding her closer. She lay there in content, listening to his heartbeat. While she was frustrated that he kept secrets from her and wouldn't tell her about his past, she was glad that what she felt for the blonde was more than a crush, and now, she knew it for a fact. She loved him. She loved her bodyguard. She loved Naruto Uzumaki. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.